Tick-tock, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. It's your friendly neighborhood philosopher here, D. Wood. And I'm with B.Apologetics and Daughter of Christ. How you guys doing? Oh, it did it again. And I don't know how to undo it. That's funny. It did it last time they were on here. Hang on, let me see what happens if I actually... Hang on.
Oh, there
Hey,
we go.
did this make your audio? Oh, okay. I had to actually bring your video up on the screen when there's no video feed from it. Let me see if I go back to just myself now. But your audio's
Okay.
on, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Sorry for the delay, everyone. Had some tech problems. Got back from Ohio a few days ago and went to turn on my desktop, and it had a big circle with a line through it, which I thought that meant it's totally dead. But then I looked up because it had a link underneath the round circle with the line through it, and it said it's a hard drive problem. It's a startup disk problem or something like that. Anyway, so it said you can run a disk utility solution, which is hard to do if you can't turn your computer on to do the disk utility. Anyway, there were instructions on how to do that. So did that, didn't work at all. Took it in, and they said the hard drive is basically well, doesn't work anymore. But it's interesting. They don't make the hard drives for that model anymore because it's like, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old, something like that. So anyway, they said that they only have a 1 terabyte hard drive for that model anymore if I wanted to use it. So long story short, I had to order a new computer, and in the meantime, until that gets here, then I'm on my MacBook, which I didn't think was a problem, but as soon as I started up on my MacBook, everything was all of Ecamm, the program that I'm using to do these live streams, is different for some reason than the way it was on my desktop. And anyway, actually couldn't find how to bring in an interviewer. Took me a little while, but anyway, here we are. Got it all set up. It is harder to see because I'm on a smaller screen right now. But anyway, we're good to go. And we've got Jai and ZOC are going to give us a presentation on some problems with the standard narrative. Now, Jai, before you jump into your presentation, let's, I don't know if you're going into this in your presentation, but on the, let's assume well, no, it's a fact. There will be people in the chat who don't know anything about, Ahruf and Kirat. I do want to briefly recap, before your presentation, briefly recap the holes in the narrative interview because it actually relates to some of what we'll be talking about. But why don't you give a quick general idea before we get started on the Ahruf and Kirat?
All right. Well, hey, thanks so much for having us on. And yeah, definitely. We do have some clips from that interview.
Oh, cool.
The infamous deleted interview. We have a couple clips in the presentation, but in short, this kind of summary of that interview was there was a bunch of talk going on about Yasser Qadhi's private views versus public views relating to preservation of Quran and all these kind of issues of ahruf, qira'at, what are these things? And they wanted to hammer that out, by way of leaking emails. Apparently they thought that was a good idea, kind of force him to do it, bring it to the public.
Now, wait a minute.
And
was that Fareed?
that was Fareed, yeah. That was Fareed.
Is that why they're calling him
Yeah,
Fareed Leaks?
That's exactly why they call him Fareed Leaks, right?
Okay.
Right. So yeah, he's responsible for the famous holes in the standard narrative interview.
Thank you,
Muhammad
Fareed.
Hijab. Thanks Fareed for that. And
I mean, hats off to so many people who played a role in that. I mean, there's Fareed. Yeah. He's the one that takes Yasser Qadhi's private messages and shares them with the world to expose Yasser Qadhi, which then... Yeah. Which that combined with Hatun showing up with all the different Qurans at Speaker's Corner sort of forced Muhammad Hijab to deal with this flood of panicking young Muslims going, what? You told us perfect preservation, dot for dot. We're hearing all this other stuff. And now Yasser Qadhi and all these leaked messages. And what's going on here? You've got to save our faith, Muhammad Hijab. Don't worry.
Exactly.
I'll get Yasser Qadhi on here. I'll get him on here and he will show you that there's only one Quran. And so anyway, we have hats off to Fareed for leaking those emails. Hats off to Muhammad Hijab for thinking that he's actually going to fix this problem. And hats off to Yasser Qadhi for admitting that there are all these holes in the narrative and that the entire argument from perfect preservation was a complete lie meant for people who don't know anything. Anyway, yeah.
So yes. So Muhammad Hijab thinks he's going to kind of save the day, bring Yasser Qadhi on. They start talking about some other topics, and then eventually he warms them up into this topic of preservation of Quran. What are your views? And this is where it gets really interesting. So he starts to press him on that topic, and Yasser Qadhi is very visibly uncomfortable. He's like all sorts of body language. Yeah. Like, don't push me. Don't push me.
I've never seen anyone less comfortable than Yasser Qadhi when that issue came up.
You know what? There's a hilarious parody that some ex-Muslim did, and he does like a really funny Yasser Qadhi impression. And I don't know if you've seen it before, but there's a hilarious parody of the interview. And I'm not sure who does it, but I could probably find it. I don't know if
who's that. Is that the same guy that does Zakir Naik?
Like Zakir Naik, yeah, that's that guy. Yeah.
Ah, gosh, I normally know his name. My brain is just really fried right now. Who is that guy?
I know
who is that guy, guys? I know everyone else will know him instantly because we've all seen him a bunch of times. He does hilarious impressions.
So Muhammad Hijab is pressing him, and Yasser Qadhi is he actually says to Muhammad Hijab, he basically tells him, and we just covered this in the stream today, but he says, I could do what's called Tawriya, which is Islamic kind of version of lying. He says, I can do this on you. I can basically lie to you. Imagine it, like, I always think it's like if you have an interview, like if you had an interview and it was like a Christian, and you had a Christian, like a New Testament scholar saying, hey, you know what? I could lie to you about this if I wanted to. Like, it's like, this is crazy. So you have a Muslim scholar here saying, I could lie to you about these issues, but I'm going to tell you some of my views here. And he says some things about the preservation of the Quran that are very shocking. Like, for example, he said, what would your Quran look like if I had you to like a blank piece of paper? What would you write on it? And he basically was like, that's not an easy yes or no question. I can't answer that, in simple, this is like something that is going to require you to take my class. You have to be an advanced student, blah 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 blah, and eventually, yeah.
Oh no, I just wanted to point out, like, if you didn't know, if you were a Muslim watching that and you didn't know anything else except Yasser Qadhi saying that if you had a blank mushaf and you had to put down what was revealed to Muhammad, and he says that's not an easy question, man. Like, if you given the story that every Muslim heard for years about perfect preservation right down to the letter, yeah, it should be it would be a little time consuming, but it wouldn't be difficult at all, right? I mean, the story that we hear from Muslims, every Muslim in the world, and there are millions of Muslims, they all got the Quran perfectly memorized. We all have the same Qurans. Like, okay, well, that should be a really easy task then to show us exactly what was revealed to Muhammad. And then Yasser Qadhi saying, this is really, really hard. That should give you if you didn't listen to anything else he said, that should give you enough information to go, wait a minute. If it's difficult, then I've been lied to, because based on what I've been told, this should be the easiest thing in history. If there's only one Quran and you want to know what the one Quran says, that should be the easiest thing ever. The fact that he's going, no, this is really, really bad. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when Zayd ibn Thabit was told to put down the Quran, and he said, you could have asked me to move a mountain from here. That's how bad it was. It's like, wait a minute, based on the story, this should be really, really easy. And so all of this should be that's what I mean. I don't understand how this isn't a much bigger problem for the Dawa fans, right? I mean, just imagine, just imagine if we were, we believe in the resurrection. Imagine like Christian scholars start saying, oh, we have no idea if Jesus rose from the dead and there's nothing to go on and we don't know. And so we have to keep this quiet. We can't talk about this in public. We can't talk about this in public that we have no idea whether Jesus died or rose from the dead. You'd be like, wait, what? That's been like foundational to our faith, and you're saying you don't actually know, and that you want to keep us in a state of ignorance. If something like that happened, I would assume it would a bunch of Christians go, wait, what's going on? What's this? And at the very least, well, if you're saying that you guys somehow know Jesus didn't rise from the dead, but you've been telling us he rose from the dead, and you have all this evidence, what, have you guys been lying to us this entire time? Are you guys a bunch of liars? These are the issues that would arise. In Islam, these guys come out, oh yeah, so, and Yasser Qadi was actually breaking it down like, okay, you got regular people who don't know anything. Then you become a student of knowledge, and then you find out, whoa, what's all this stuff? What is all this stuff? Kirat and Aruf, and you guys can't figure out all these different manuscripts. What's going on here? And then you get to a higher level where you just accept whatever the scholar you're following says. And then eventually you encounter non-Muslim scholars who don't accept those answers and who point out the problems with whatever you're saying that somehow reconciles all these issues. And he said about the non-Muslim academics who contradict the Muslim scholars, he said, and we know they're right. We know they're right because they're quoting our sources to us. And so this is just like layer upon layer upon layer of admissions. And how any Muslim trusted Dawa from that point on is like beyond me. I mean, it's like we grew up hearing the story of the boy who cried wolf. This kid, he keeps coming out and lying until he comes out and he's actually telling the truth one day. And no one believes him because, like, wait, we've caught you lying repeatedly. We're not interested, dude. And that's what I don't get about the Dawa fans. It's like their guys lie to them, the lie gets exposed. Then their guys lie to them again, and then the lie gets exposed, and then they lie to them again. And no matter how many times the Dawa guys could lie to their fans 100,000 times in a row, those same fans would go right back to those same Dawa guys for an answer to the next objection to Islam. Absolutely, absolutely amazing. Anyway, my point there was this goes back to the beginning of Islam. There was all this confusion back then. There's the confusion now. The difference is Muslim scholars over the centuries realized we need to lie to people about this. We need to lie to the regular people who don't understand the issues that we're dealing with. We need to lie to them. And then, so they spent a long time lying to them. There is no problem. And then all of a sudden we get to the age of the internet. We get to Farid leaking private emails. And the issue rises to the surface again, and the lies are exposed, and these are good times. I did want to point out, yes, people have pointed out, it was Vidu Vids. Remember him?
Oh, yes.
Vidu Vids. I think that's the guy you're talking about there. Okay, so Vidu Vids, guys, check it out. Does great impressions. Zakir Naik, Yasser Qadi, all those guys. All right, back to you, Jai. What were your takeaways from that big discussion?
Yeah, so that was a hilarious parody that guy did. And yeah, so one of the major takeaways was that he was basically asking Muhammad Hijab, he's like, rhetorically, he's asking him, whatever you ask me to reproduce for you, like you give me a blank like book and you ask me to write the Quran on it, you have to ask the question, is that how it was in early Medina? And that's another one that's like shocking, because that's what you hear from Muslims all the time, that the Quran they recite today is exactly as Muhammad recited it, word for word, letter for letter, exactly how you pronounce it, down to like the very syllable. And so he's like, is that how it was in early Medina? And then he basically gets him, Muhammad Hijab almost kind of pins him to an answer where he's like, it's going to be a combination of different qira'at. It's not going to be just Hafs. It's not going to be just this, not going to be just that. It's going to be like some here, some there. And if you guys check out the stream that we did with David before, you'll see some of the earlier Muslim opinions on these different Qurans, different readings. They were kind of similar to that. They were like, yeah, this one is correct, this one is wrong, this one's better than that one, this one's more correct than that one. And so they kind of would like, pick and choose which ones they liked based on different reasons. And Yasser Qadi, he likens himself to the classical scholars. Even Muhammad Hijab did during the interview. He said to him, that's kind of like how the classical scholars thought of it too. And so that was huge. That was really huge. And the impact of it was even bigger than I think anyone could ever imagine. So I knew right away that these interviews weren't going to last. So of course, we did, and I'm sure many others did. I'm sure you did, and
Yeah,
many others did.
we were all downloading like crazy.
The video like
We
crazy.
knew that was coming down, and then it did. I
Yeah,
forget who. First, they started silencing comments because Muslims were going,
yeah,
"This is destroying my faith. Well, you guys were lying," and
exactly.
then so they're like hiding comments, and then I think one of them took that section out of the video,
Yeah,
but left the
yeah.
video up, and then one just completely took it down. Then eventually the other took it down, and then Yasser Qadi started giving fake copyright strikes to anyone who was
Oh yeah.
posting clips of it and stuff like that. And then he was
It's some
doxing, and then he
yeah,
was doxing people because he was doxing people who challenged the fake copyright strike. And it was just
yeah,
amazing. It's like watching a guy just completely melt down because that's Yasser Qadi, right? He's scholarly level.
yeah.
He does academic work. He knows what fair use is. He knows he's allowed to take the words of someone else and share them and comment on them. He knows that. But he was posting deliberately fake copyright strikes and then doxing people, going like full jihad, I'm threatening you mode. And just watching a guy who's always portrayed himself as this scholar, and I'm a scholar, I'm an academic, I'm an academic, and this is at the academic level, and just to watch him completely implode and greatest freak out ever. And yeah, just
Yeah.
imagine. I mean, his dad was one of the guys who popularized, Mazhar Qazi is one of the guys who popularized the myth. It's a quote from his book. From the time it was revealed, there has not been one single letter of difference between any two Qurans in the entire history. So 14 centuries, there's not been one letter of difference between any two Qurans. His dad's one of the guys that popularized that nonsense. And then can you imagine you're the guy, Yasser Qadi, you're the guy who's responsible for exposing your own dad as a liar and then exposing all the Muslim scholars and Dawah guys who've been lying about this for decades. You just expose them all as liars, and then you've got Muslims contacting you. Wait a minute, this is what gave us confidence in Islam. This has all been a lie. Can you imagine? No, I mean, the point is I kind of get it. I kind of get what a panic mode he was sent into, because that is not, you wanted to be the guy who's like defending Islam, not the guy who's destroying it from within. Again, hats off to Muhammad Hijab, Fareed, Yasser Qadi for
Yeah.
for imploding that way and for helping us expose that lie. I did want to point, before you continue, I did want to point out one more thing, because after Yasser Qadi had that famous little saying, the standard narrative has holes in it. That's what I'm going to say. Lots of us use that as like the standard narrative about the perfect preservation of the Quran.
Yeah.
And so, hey, he's saying that the standard narrative about this perfect preservation, there are holes in the narrative. Whereas he was going beyond that. He was taking it for granted that there are all kinds of differences in the Quran. The standard narrative he was talking about was the standard narrative of people who actually know about these things, but who think that Muslim scholars can account for them in terms of ahruf and kirat and various explanations like this, how it all makes sense, and that this all goes back to Muhammad. That was the narrative he was saying that has holes in it. It's because that's a narrative that us Muslim scholars, we all tell ourselves, oh, yes, we can explain that with the kirat. And oh, yes, we can explain that with the ahruf. And we can explain this and we can explain that. And then he's talking about being challenged by non-Muslim academics. He says, and we know they're right. They're quoting our sources. So he's saying the standard narrative of even the Muslim scholars and the da'is and the students of knowledge, that narrative has holes in it. And it's basically, yeah, I still have to work on this, and maybe eventually I'll figure this out. But it's like, gosh, what a bunch of liars, lying liars from lying liar land on Liars Get In Free Day. That's Dawah. That's the Dawah carnival. All right. Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Mhm.
I was gonna say, when you're giving your hats off to all the players, Farida and Mimi and all of them, hats off to Allah, because remember he planned all this, right? He's the best of
Best of
Oh yeah.
planners.
deceivers slash planners. So he gave them all this ahruf, and then he planned all of it to come out.
Yeah. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, can you imagine? It's like, hey, I revealed it in all these different ways, and then Uthman burns them all. Ooh, I'm gonna get back at him. And I told them to memorize it, and then they screw up and they come up with all these different kirat and so on. And then now they're all lying about what they did wrong. I will expose them for
Yeah.
destroying my perfect book.
And so Yasser Qadi, he felt the heat from the Muslims after this, and he started talking about things like what he wants his legacy to be, like what he wants to be remembered for. And all everyone was saying was, yeah, you're going to be remembered for being the guy who said holes in the standard narrative. Like that's who you're going to be remembered as.
That's it, by
Yeah,
the way, right? I mean, like
exactly.
when I think Yasser Qadi, when anyone thinks Yasser Qadi right now, it's exactly what they think of. There's nothing
Yeah.
else. Doesn't matter what else he does.
And so he tried to come back a little bit, and he made like a, I don't know, he thinks it was a clarification, but he had some choice words for you, for Jay Smith,
Oh, yeah.
and others.
Ultra crepidarian.
Yeah, ultra crepidarian. Yeah.
Well, he called me. He went on a tirade against me. He's an evil, repugnant, disgusting, evil, vile jerk. That's one of the awesomest clips ever.
I've never seen anyone more evil than yeah. That
was classic.
Yeah,
classic Yasser Qadi.
Yeah, and so his main kind of thing, like you said, what he was getting at, the whole like preservation issue, that's a given. And he was using like some Arabic terms, like flowered throughout his speech. Some of them were technical as well, so he was like trying to, even for Muslims, probably like talk above their heads, but it was getting out because we were like, this is what he means here, this is what he's saying here. But really what he was getting at, like you said, is the relationship between this hadith about the ahruf and then the modern kind of Qurans that we have today. Like, how are they related? And that's what this presentation is about, like the relationship between those two, how Muslim scholars try to fix that problem, or how they, what ways do they reconcile these issues, and then we're going to pose some problems towards their views.
Mm. And as far when we're talking about Yasser Qadi now just being remembered for that one interview, all the stuff he said. I mean, that guy literally wrote the book on the sciences of the Quran. He's been going to conferences for a long, long time, and then this happens. It reminds me of how when anyone sees Will Smith now, all they remember is the slap, right? Now, if you ask them to think about it, they'll, okay, I remember, parents just don't understand, and Summertime, and okay, I remember The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and all these movies, and all these great performances, and but the first thing in anyone's mind now is that big slap, and so that's the same thing with Yasser Qadi. He's got his slap at the Oscars moment, but it was on Muhammad Hijab's live stream. All right, so I'll take a couple quick super chats and then we'll jump into your presentation. This is a smaller screen. Let's see. Stop hiding AP. We know he's why you're late. That is true. That is true. We just got sick of waiting and went ahead and started without him. It's just what we have to do. No, just kidding. Just kidding. This is you actually messaged me like in the morning and said you have a presentation that you wanted to go through at some point, and I said we could do it today. So yeah, we just we went ahead and set this up.
Yep.
Let's see. Oh, no comment there. Then there are holes in the narrative of AP being late. Why is it not an issue for Muslims that the Quran is arranged longest to shortest by humans? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because that is something that's just arranged by humans, like they said, and even companions had different orders, like the Sana manuscript, for example, like the ordering is different between like the chapter arrangements. The Quran today is like, you have like chapter 1 that's short, and then you have it's generally like longest, shortest. There's some with some exception. And yeah, that who is responsible for that? That's not something that's like revealed. So how do they come up with that? And like I said, companions had different Qurans that had different orders. I think Aisha was actually, there's a hadith where she's specifically asked about that, and she basically says like, why does it matter? like what does it matter? Why does it matter why it's ordered, or something to that effect? And
well,
so
if one of your fundamental principles of interpreting your book is the doctrine of abrogation, where later revelations can abrogate earlier revelations, I'd say the order matters a whole lot. Seems like it matters a whole lot. Wild
there's a difference
stuff.
Like the companions, when they were putting the Quran together, like in Kitab al-Masahif, the book Masahif, they actually differed on what was the last verse of the Quran. Some said it was in Surah 9.
Yep.
And some said, no, actually, it's Surah 2, verse 281. So the numbering of the surahs, like Surah 2 and Surah 9, you'd think that would be the first revelation, but that's not the case. They actually forgot which verses were revealed when.
Yep. Oh, they forgot quite a bit.
Yeah.
Pretty funny. All right, one more here. About 4. Oh, wait. No, there was one before that. Sorry. D. Wood thinks 1 David plus 1 Jai plus 1 DOC equals 3, but we only see 1 Christian on the screen. Joking, good work, you all. And I got Mike Winger to say the word wingling on the stream today. Well, it's not very hard to get Mike Winger to say the word wingling. That's the derogatory term he uses for his fans. He refers to them as winglings. And I mean, just think about this. It sounds like he's calling them dinglings. What kind of psycho talks about his own fans that way? I don't know. It's sick. It's sick and depraved. Anyway, one more here. About 4 weeks from today, help celebrate International Apostasy Day. International Apostasy Day. This day creates an opportunity for those who have secretly left Islam to rally together with others, potentially making it safer for them to do so. 22nd of August. Hey, maybe we'll have a special, big special show with a bunch of apostates that day. That might be a good show. And cool. One more, good old American values. What's that?
Is that Daniel?
Oh, never mind. That's Daniel Hakikachu. Don't know if you saw that, but he's basically arguing that since there are girls in high school who are cheerleaders, then that's the same thing as his prophet having sex with a prepubescent girl. So why is anyone complaining? We're all hypocrites. Nice.
Yeah, I remember that you did it with IP and AP. I thought that was like right when you think Daniel can't get any worse, he just does it and gets worse.
Yeah. It's pretty awful and terrible. All right, so you ready to jump into your presentation?
Yeah, we're ready.
All right, I'm going to pop that up on the screen.
Okay. All right. I don't know. I remember last time you were able to get your cell phone there as well, but I don't know if it's a different configuration with the system you're using now, but we can...
Wait, what's that?
I was going to say, last time you were able to put yourself on a screen with it too.
Oh,
your camera.
Yeah. But I don't want to try that right now because I'd have to mess with the settings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So in that case,
in other words, I barely got us on today because it's a totally new configuration. So we'll just have this up there.
Okay. So in that case, is this good? Full screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're just going to kind of go through these issues between the relationship between the ahruf and qira'at, which are there's a hadith that we're going to go over about the 7 ahruf, and then the qira'at, which are these modern different versions of the Quran in Arabic that we have today. And this is an issue that's faced, I say, by modern Muslim scholars, because if you guys check out some of the previous streams that we did with David, we show that Muslim classical scholars had completely different views on this topic and the relationship between ahruf and qira'at. So this is one of the famous hadiths on the topic. There are many hadith about the 7 ahruf, and I won't read the whole thing here, but just kind of paraphrase what's going on.
No. These hadiths are so important, especially this one, because I mean it completely destroys the standard narrative about the different ahruf in terms of the average Muslim. As soon as they find out about the ahruf, they're taught that these are just dialects and so on. So anyway, this is a very important hadith. So yeah, go ahead and go ahead.
We'll read. Yeah, so we'll read this one. So basically, just before we read it, just like a comment before we read it is, the companions had this assumption that when they heard Muhammad reciting the Quran, that's just how it was recited. So you have like Muhammad teaches one companion, like let's say chapter 25 of the Quran, and that companion thinks, okay, that's chapter 25. That's it. There's no variations, no different versions. Muhammad said that's chapter 25. That's chapter 25. So that's like kind of the working assumption that basically the companions had. And so this hadith here, I have the link on sunnah.com, but this is in Al-Bukhari 7550, and this is the hadith here.
Okay, it says, narrated Umar ibn al-Khattab, he said, I heard Hisham ibn Hakim reciting Surah Al-Furqan during the lifetime of Allah's Messenger. I listened to his recitation and noticed that he was reciting in a way that Allah's Messenger had not taught me. I was about to jump over him while he was still in prayer, but I waited patiently, and when he finished his prayer, I put my sheet round his neck and pulled him and said,
Like a dog.
He's got like a leash on his neck.
who has taught you this surah which I have heard you reciting? Hisham said, Allah's Messenger taught it to me. I said, you are telling a lie.
Liar.
For he taught it to
Liar.
For he had taught it to me in a way different from the way you have recited it. Then I started dragged him to Allah's Messenger. and Allah's Messenger said, I have heard this man reciting Surah Al-Furqan in a way that you have not taught me. The Prophet said, O Omar, release him. Recite, O Hisham. Hisham recited in the way I heard him reciting. Allah's Messenger said, it was revealed like this. Then Allah's Messenger said, recite, O Omar. I recited in the way he had taught me. Whereupon he said, it was revealed like this. And added, the Quran has been revealed to be recited in 7 ahraf, so recite of it whichever is easier for you.
Yes.
Yeah, and you may be right about to go into some of the various problems, but I mean, we really need people to understand.
Yeah, this is like a foundational thing. Yeah.
This is so, I mean, think about the problems here, right? And think about what the obvious explanation for this is and how silly Muhammad's response is. Because that's how it is in the Muslim sources. It's the same thing with like Muhammad's relationship with Zainab and the explanation. Like the explanation you give sounds completely idiotic. All the hadiths where Muhammad gets caught in his house or behind a curtain with Dihya al-Kalbi, and he says, "Oh yeah, that's the angel Gabriel." It's like, oh come on, are you joking? Are you joking? You think we're stupid enough to fall for that? Anyway, it's like that right here. Think about this, guys. So the explanation, which any Muslim now will just say, "Oh, that makes sense. It was revealed in 7 different ways." That's why these guys were reciting it in these different ways. Guys, you mean that Muhammad all along is revealing the Quran in 7 different ways, and this is the first they hear about it? This is a shock to Umar. Like, it's not until, in other words, it's after his companions realize that they're reciting the Quran in different ways, they go to Muhammad. Hey, Muhammad, I'm about to do something to this guy. He's reciting the Quran differently. Oh yeah, don't you know I've been revealing it in 7 different ways? Yeah. Are you kidding me, guys? What's the guys just sort of learning how to learning what inference to the best explanation is. So what's the best explanation here? Is it Muhammad was revealing the Quran in 7 different ways, but no one knew about it until he had to tell them that he's been revealing it in 7 different ways because it was a secret somehow? Is that the best explanation, or is it a better explanation that Muhammad's memory wasn't perfect, that when he was reciting a passage to Hisham, he didn't remember it perfectly. It changed over time a little bit in his memory. So when he's teaching it to Hisham, he gets it a little bit differently. Umar, who memorized the earlier version, he doesn't know. He hears Hisham reciting it in a different way. And then they go to Muhammad, and Muhammad can't admit, okay, I got a problem. I must have changed it over time, but it's okay. I mean, I'm an old man, blah, blah, blah. No, but Muhammad can't admit that. And so instead it's, oh yes, Allah revealed it in all of these different ways. So that's one issue. The other issue is that these two guys are from the same, these guys are from the same tribe. So they speak the same dialect, and this doesn't work. Again, I don't know if you're going into any of that, but I wanted people to know that everyone, guys, this is, if you were to list like the top 20 hadiths that people need to know this one. This is a very important hadith because it exposes a bunch of lies that are being told.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you're right. So that's one of the explanations Muslims will try to give and say, oh, these were just different dialects. But as you pointed out, and that's what Muslim scholars have been saying for centuries, that no, they're from the same tribe, so they spoke the same dialect. And what's interesting here is how the hadith ends. It says, so recite of it whichever is easy for you. Now that's going to come up later. That's really important. That's an important note. Now, there are multiple versions of this Ahruf story. Here's another one. This is one that Yasser Qadi mentions in his book here, and I'm just kind of quoting his book, Introduction to the Sciences of the Quran, and there's the page number, page 174, and there's the reference as well. It's in Sahih Muslim. So, and it's on Sunnah.com. And so this is another kind of version of the explanation of the Ahruf. So this one is with Ubay, and I don't know if we want to read all of this one, but basically he heard two people reciting the Quran differently than how Muhammad taught him. And so they go to Muhammad and he does the same thing again. He says, okay, Obey, I want you to recite it. And he recites it. Okay, you recite it. Okay, they recite it. It was revealed that way. It was revealed that way. And then Obey says, there occurred in my mind a sort of denial and doubt that did not even exist in the time of Jahiliyyah, which is before Islam. And then his son Muhammad solves the problem. When the Messenger of Allah saw how I was affected, he struck my chest.
Hey, that's the same way. That's the same way he dealt with the problem of Aisha sneaking out of the house and lying to him about it.
Yeah, exactly. So this guy is getting all worried. And by the way, Yasser Qali notes in the interview, and he notes, elsewhere, other scholars notice that Obey is like not just some average companion, but he's like the master reciter of the Quran. And so he says, he struck me on the chest, like he punched me, he hit me in the chest, whereupon I started sweating and felt as though I was looking at Allah in fear. And, then he goes on and says, this is there's a little typo there. It should say resent to me. It says MC, but I'll fix that typo later. Anyway, it was revealed in one harf, which is the singular of ahruf, but I requested Allah to make things easy on my nation, etc., and then you get 7 total. So here's another version of the story where it's Ubay this time, and he has doubt and denial entering into him that he didn't even have even before he was a Muslim. And so this is huge. So again, you have multiple companions, just like David said, just completely confused about this. They're like, wait, Muhammad taught it to me like this. I'm hearing other people recite it in different ways. What's the explanation? And they get doubt, they get denial. So these problems of variations and different versions of the Quran, they have existed since the very beginning, and they cause doubt, they cause problems.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Yeah.
Not sure if it makes things easy if they're having doubts and they're, almost killing each other because dragging each other and calling each other liars. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, this is just like I can't emphasize to you enough how much anyone who's looking at this as an outsider goes, are you serious? I mean, are you serious? They accepted this? Guys, so we already heard from Umar. Umar had no idea that the Quran is being revealed in all these different ways. Umar, who eventually became the second of the rightly guided caliphs, Muhammad's revealing the Quran in all these different ways. For all these years, Umar never hears about it until after he starts seeing the differences. And here you have Ubay. What did Umar say about Ubay? That Ubay was the best of the Quran reciters among us. He's the best. Yep. This guy's the best Quran reciter. Wait a minute. You're telling me that the best Quran reciter did not know that Muhammad is revealing the Quran in 7 different ways, and no one finds this out until afterwards, and then it causes doubt, and then Muhammad's solution is, well, let me whack this guy in the chest. That'll shut him up. And that'll make him realize that I know what I'm talking about. And that's how these intellectual doubts were dealt with in 7th century Arabia. The other issue is this has been a while since I was studying this, but if I recall correctly, Hisham converted to Islam like after the conquest of Mecca, which would, if that's correct, then that would mean this is like within the last 2 years. So Muhammad's been receiving revelations for decades now, sharing them with his followers. And it's not until the very end, when he's all old and about to die, that's when they start realizing, hey, we're reciting the Quran in different ways. Oh, guys, don't you know that Allah has revealed the Quran in all these different ways? And I'm just remembering now to tell you about it. Oopsie. This is insane, man.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so that those are, two different versions. And like I said, there's more versions of like why the ahruf were revealed. And people might be wondering, why are we like keeping it in Arabic, this word ahruf? And we're going to get to that, because the short answer is Muslims don't know. Nobody knows. Muslims or non-Muslims, they don't know what that word means in this context. So ahruf is like a hyper literal translation is letters. Ahruf is the plural of the word harf, letters. But that's not what it means in this. It doesn't mean 7 letters. So people don't know what it means, and we're going to get to that. Here's just like, if you're interested, you want to know like what Western scholars have to say about ahruf and how do they understand it. It's basically exactly what David just said. So Shadi Nasser here notes in the transmission of the variant readings of the Quran on page 17. He says that, Western scholarship did not devote much attention to the tradition of the 7 ahruf. And he goes on to talk about Noldeke, who examined the different interpretations of what was possibly meant by the 7 ahruf, and, he rejected most of those. So boil it down, he says that basically what it is Muhammad's inability to accurately remember what he had recited earlier. Exactly what David was saying. So this is kind of like what the kind of outside of Islam, Western academia, what does Western scholarship have to say? That's pretty much what they chop it down to. This is where the tradition came from. And Shadi Nasser also likes it to like the chicken or the egg, and which came first. So it's like, was it the variants that came, and then this tradition came to kind of cover it up, or is it that the tradition was there and that's what kind of explains it? He follows the view that these things came later to kind of explain the variants. Like, you can find many different traditions like that in Islam, where they were facing some sort of issue, and then people would just make up traditions to kind of justify their views. And he thinks this is just one of those examples. Another example of that.
Okay, so just to clarify what you're pointing out there. So Yasser Qadi said, he talks about non-Muslim academics not having that red line. So yes, from a Muslim perspective, from like Sheikh Yasser Qadi's perspective, he if a non-Muslim looks at the whole story, they'll go, "Oh, come on, are you kidding me?" It's obvious that there were just, if we take that hadith as authentic, it's obvious that Muhammad just didn't remember the Quran perfectly. You ended up with some differences, and then he came up with a story of why those differences are there, right? So you could say that that's granting the authenticity of the hadith. So that's an example of this red line. It would not be open to someone like Sheikh Yasser Qadi to say, okay, Muhammad made up a story about Allah revealing it in all these different ways, because he's trying to cover up the fact that he was reciting it in different ways because he forgot it, and it became confused in his mind over time. Yasser Qadi can't grant that, because that would be Muhammad making something up about Allah revealing things in order to rescue himself. And so Yasser Qadi's not going to grant that. A Western academic would have no problem granting that. Oh, why couldn't Muhammad be making things up? So anyway, you have those kinds of issues. Even if we take the hadith seriously, then the way a Muslim is going to view the story is very different from the way a non-Muslim is going to view the story. From a non-Muslim perspective, it's obvious what happened. There's no way we're taking this seriously. But I think what you were pointing out there is, you don't even have to grant the authenticity of the hadith. A different possibility is that there were differences in the Quran that leading up to the compilation of the hadiths, and that once Muslims are realizing, hey, we have all these differences in the Quran, let's fabricate a story. Let's fabricate a story that makes sense of this. And we'll say that, oh yeah, because it was revealed in all these different kinds of ways. So basically you have multiple ways of coming at this. You could reject the hadith and say, which, by the way, if you can reject the hadith, you'd still have to grant that the hadith was produced for a reason, namely that the Quran ended up being recited in a bunch of different ways. And so they're trying to fix that. But if you grant the authenticity of the hadith, which you would if you're a good Sunni Muslim, then even that doesn't get you out of the woods, because any non-Muslim looking at this goes, that is the stupidest. In other words, it's actually worse if you take the hadith seriously, because from a non-Muslim perspective, if we believe that Muhammad actually said that and that was his excuse and justification, we have to conclude that your prophet is a liar and a narcissist who couldn't admit that he was wrong and who would even blame God for his own mistakes here. And that's just, how are we supposed to take this guy seriously anymore? Whereas if you say, yeah, it was a later companion who lied, you still have to deal with the differences in the Quran, but at least it wouldn't make your prophet an obvious liar and an obvious narcissist.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's, yeah. And you know what? I've heard Muslims say, like I've heard Farid say, in response to this, he goes, "Oh yeah, so Western scholars, they kind of just chop it up to Muhammad forgetting things." And his takeaway from that is, well, they're still admitting that the origin of these things are coming from Muhammad. So he thinks that that's like a win for him.
It's a win.
It's like
winning.
Like they're literally. Oh man. So here's a Muslim scholar, contemporary Muslim scholar, who is going back, and this is just from a book that we found online, just an online translation of a Muslim website, and there's a Saudi scholar, Abdulaziz al-Qari, and he said that he was researching this question for a long time about the hadith about the 7 ahruf. He says more than 10 years he's trying to figure out what this ahruf means and what do the scholars say about it and all that. So he goes to one of the big teachers, Ashankiti, who we've mentioned before, who briefly again, Ashankiti, he's a huge influence, impact on the Muslim world. He's like the teacher of like the mufti, some of the muftis of Saudi Arabia, for example, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so he went to this guy, and he Ashankiti, and he asked him what conclusion he reached about the meaning of this hadith. And he goes, the conclusion I've reached is that I don't know what it means. So here's one scholar who's been studying this question about the 7 ahruf for more than 10 years continuously. And so he goes to someone who he considers a major scholar, and he goes, what's the answer to this problem? What is the 7 ahruf? What is this? He goes, I don't know. My conclusion is that I don't know. And I think I have a clip from Yasser Qadhi saying that as well. This is just
nearly 40 different opinions concerning this matter. And by the way, that's very similar to what Yasser Qadhi said in his book. I didn't read the book. Nabil read the book. And Nabil was shocked because he had only been a Christian for maybe 3 years at this point. And he was doing a debate. And so to prepare for his debate on the preservation of the Quran, he was reading Yasser Qadhi's Sciences of the Quran. I forget the number that Yasser Qadhi gave, but it was something similar. And Nabil's like, oh my goodness, did you know that there are 37 different opinions on what this is? And no one knows what the correct position is. And so he was still finding all this stuff out. Even though he was a very well-educated Muslim, he was still finding all this stuff out later. And it was shocking to him.
By the way, that was a great debate with Nabil, and the Muslim in that debate, I forget who it was now, but he actually cited Yasser Qadhi in the debate, like as an authority. And so I was just thinking, like, this is, Muslims actually used to appeal to this guy in debates as a scholar. Like, this is what Sheikh Yasser Qadhi said. He's quoting it to Nabil and like as an authority. And now they're throwing him under the bus. So it's like
I think that was Bassam Zawadi.
Yes, that's right. That's him. Yeah. Okay, so here we have Yasser Qadhi, just kind of like you said, there's one Q&A website here. There's nearly 40 different opinions about what ahruf means. Arthur Jeffrey, he famously translated ahruf as modes. So you'll see it sometimes translated as modes. But again, they have no idea what it means. There's up to 40 different opinions. And here's Yasser Qadi just kind of summarizing. Oh, sorry. One more slide before we get to Yasser Qadi, what the ahruf are. But before we get to that, now here's a different thing. Okay. Now we're in the 10th century, and there's about 70 plus different versions of the Quran floating around. This is after Uthman, his canonization. We're talking 10th century now. And you have in the 10th century this guy called Ibn Mujahid, who enforced these 7 readings that we have here on the screen, 7 readings that were enforced upon the Muslim population. And he would enforce these by law. Like if people disagreed with him, like for example, there's famous accounts where people said, hey, I have the Quran that was read by, Ibn Masud or Ubay, and he would send them to prison because he had ties with the government, he had ties with the political system, with judges, and so they would send these guys to prison, whip them, basically force them to recant their position to where they have to accept his 7 readings.
So these are the 7 kind of like hitting them in the chest.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's always hey, what about shut up, or we'll lock you up or hit you or beat you or kill you or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, the attitude hasn't really changed too much through the centuries, and so he canonizes these 7 different readings of the Quran, and so you might ask the question, okay, there's 7 ahruf, and then there's 7 qira'at that he chooses. So you might think, is that the 7 qira'at? Are they the 7 ahruf? And the answer that Muslim scholars say is no, it's not. And so we have As-Sayuti, and this is kind of a paraphrase of what is in his book here. Some people confused the 7 qira'at, the ones that Ibn Mujahid chose in the 10th century, with the 7 ahruf, like the hadith that we were just reading. But this contradicts the consensus of the scholars, and only the unlearned, ignorant people think that.
So read that through 2 more times.
Yeah, some people confused the 7 qira'at with the 7 ahruf, but this contradicts the consensus of the scholars, and only the unlearned, ignorant people think that.
I wanted you to read that again and go ahead and do it one more time, just because I still hear this today from Muslims in the chat.
Okay, go ahead.
I still get comments from Muslims on this saying exactly this.
Really?
Go ahead.
Wow.
Some people confuse the 7 qira'at with the 7 ahruf, but this contradicts the consensus of the scholars, and only the unlearned, ignorant people think that.
This is As-Sayuti's book.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I just want to point you Muslims who are watching. I mean, earlier I said I have no idea how you can take Dawah guys seriously when you keep catching them. And if you look at this, notice there's ahruf. One, they never want you to hear about the ahruf. If you hear about the different ahruf and you ask them about it, what? The Quran is revealed in these 7 different ways? What's going on there? They're going to pretend to be completely confident, and they're going to say, oh, yes, this just refers to dialects. Everyone knows that. They know that's a lie. They know the dialect explanation doesn't work at all. They know their own scholar. They have no clue what this refers to, but they can't let you know that your greatest scholars have no idea what this is, that they're completely baffled and confused. They can't let you know about that because that will hurt your faith as a Muslim. So one, they never want you to know about it. They never want you to know about the ahruf. They never want you to know about the kirat. They never want you to know basically anything about 14 centuries of the Quran. They don't want you to know any of that. They want you to think that there's just one Quran perfectly preserved from the time of Muhammad, because that's what will give you the greatest confidence in Islam. And if your confidence in Islam has to be propped up with endless lies, that's what they'll do. But so you Muslims, what do you do when it's actually in front of your faces that you have all these different kirat and all these different ahruf And the greatest scholars they can spend years of their lives and they still can't figure it out. All they can say is, oh, we got 40 different explanations. Who knows? Allah knows best. That's the best they can come up with. And so they have to lie to you. How in the name of common sense do you still trust these guys? And how do you come to us and start, oh, but you Christians are so confused about your book, whereas we're so confident in our book, and all your confidence is based on lies. It's revolting. It's revolting to think that the true religion, the truth, needs an endless supply of lies to defend it. It's disgusting.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. And so you have now Muslim, like your common Muslim is now thinking, okay, like and even back then they were thinking, okay, you have the 7 ahruf and you have 7 qira'at, so they must be the same thing, like 7, 7. Okay, that must be the same thing. So Ibn Mujahid was actually highly criticized for that, and Muslim scholars don't know why he only chose 7. They don't know why he limited to 7. He could have chose 8, 9, 10. They don't know why 7. He chose 7, but he did. And so eventually they added 3 more in the 15th century. Okay, so I have a couple things here on the screen. So before, I just want to show it again. This is what he did first, just these 7 readers. And now we have not just 7 readers, but now they each have 2 transmitters, 2 students. So he didn't put a cap on how many students or narrators each reader had. That was something done by 2 scholars, Ash-Shatibi and Adani, in the 11th, 12th centuries. They added on this other kind of, canonization, Nasser calls it a canonization of the 2 transmitters for each reader. So you have like one reader, like for example, Hamza, and then Hamza has 2 students, Khalaf and Khalid, or Khalad, and this is his 2 students. So Ibn Mujahid didn't put that cap on there. You had like some readers had like 10 students, 15 students, and they would differ with each other. But that kind of gets really complicated, and it just shows a lot more holes in the Muslim problems and narratives that they have. So then, 15th century, Ibn al-Jazari now, he adds on 3 extra readings. So now it goes from 7 to 10 readings, and each of the 10 have 2 transmitters each. So if you were to put these in like print versions, you would have 20 different versions of the Quran in Arabic, 20 different versions. And you might think like, okay, let's say for example, Hafs and Shu'aba, for example, they both come from Asim. You might think like they both agree because they're both a student. No, they don't. So you have one teacher, and then his students will disagree even on like some verses here or there, some details here or there. So if you have like print versions of these books, you're gonna have 20 different Qurans right in front of you that have different Arabic wordings, letters. Some of them have added words, some of them words taken away, and some of them they're just contradicting as well, which we'll get into that as well. But yeah, so that's kind of what we have today. These 20 different. Yeah.
So this is part of the reason that Hatun was able to show up at Speaker's Corner with 26 different Arabic Qurans, is because of this confusion here.
Exactly.
That 99.99% of Muslims had no idea about, because their scholars were lying to them their entire lives.
Exactly.
Wild.
Yeah, and the printing press only printed Hafs when it first came.
Yeah.
They didn't print all the others to this to the same extent because of
the confusion.
And only because they only chose one and they said, let's go with this one.
Yeah.
Again, the ones in power went with Hafs, and it was completely random. They just chose one.
And that's like the version that they chose, wasn't actually the one that was popular throughout history, actually, as well. So that's Hafs as a whole has a lot of holes in Hafs as well. Now here we have Yasser Qadi. He's going to be kind of there he is. He's going to be basically summarizing. Yeah, there he is. So yeah, he's going to be summarizing what exactly we've been talking about so far. So here's Yasser Qadi giving a summary.
Is the ahruf And what is the relationship of the qira'at with the ahruf? Yes. Now, this is one of the most complicated and dense questions that ulama have written about. As-Suyuti lists 40 opinions in Al-Itqan, right? Ash-Shawkani also lists them. The teacher of our teachers, Sheikh Shanqiti, the one who wrote Adwa al-Bayan, right? He was asked, what is your opinion about the ahruf? And he said, my opinion about the ahruf is that I don't have an opinion. This is a Shanqiti. He's so confused.
Okay.
He's not the only one.
Yeah, he's not the only one. So yeah, he's basically just kind of summarizing like 40 different opinions. It's the most complicated technical issue, and
He's saying if they're confused, what do you expect me to do?
Exactly.
I can't fix it for you.
Teacher of our teachers is confused. Like, what do you expect from me? And
I mean, it's just funny because it's similar to what he was saying about Ubay, right? It's like the best of the best from the generation of Muhammad was shocked, and this issue caused him doubts. And by the way, I mean, that wasn't even nearly as big an issue back then, because they're just dealing with, okay, these two guys are reciting the Quran differently, and Muhammad said they're both revealed by Allah in that way. That was causing him doubts. I mean, imagine the confusion years later. But it's the same thing. It's like, hey, if Ubay was bothered by this, what do you expect from me? And here, if the greatest scholars much later had this issue and couldn't explain it and have to say, I don't know, how am I supposed to know what these things are? What are you expecting from me? It's just one giant mess. Again, Muslims, how much of this did they tell you before they were forced? Before they were forced to tell you, because it started coming out. No, they lied. They didn't tell you any of this. They lied to you. And you still trust the exact same people who lied to you your entire lives. Imagine being like 40 years old and people have been lying to your entire lives. Finally, the 10,000 lies that they've told you are all exposed. And then you just go and ask them for more information as if nothing's gone wrong. It's insane. It's just insane that somehow the Dawah fans are conditioned to mindlessly accept lies and to have zero problem being lied to. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And so Yasser Qadhi, he's like, what's the relationship between these two things? So we know that the 7 ahruf, which are now 10, they're not the qiraat, that the 7 that became 10, they're not the 7 ahruf. We know that. So what's the relationship between those two things? And that's, very difficult to answer when you don't even know what ahruf is. So no one can like point to, like, you can't take a Quran and be like, oh, this is one of the, one of the harf, or this is like one of the ahruf or whatever. Like, you can't do that because no one knows what exactly it is. So the question is, okay, so what's the relationship between this hadith about the 7 ahruf and these different Qurans that we have in our hands today, these like physical copies of the different Arabic Qurans that we have? And so there's 3 different opinions that Yasser Qadhi notes in his book here. We've been talking about the book from Yasser Qadhi, that Introductions to the Sciences of the Quran. He wrote it when he was like in his 20s, a Medina student, and he was promoting the standard narrative back then, and he was really like a star of that movement, Salafi, all that. But then he kind of grew out of that. But in the book, it represents kind of the standard views that Muslims hold to. And these are the 3 different positions that Muslims hold to that Yasser Qadhi notes. So one position says that Uthman burnt 6 of the 7 ahruf, and only one of them exists now. Okay? So all these different Qurans that we have today, they can be traced back to one of these, one of the ahruf. Okay? And then the second view is that they don't know how many, some of the ahruf exist today, and that's the majority view. That's the majority view that most Muslims will hold to. Some of the ahruf exist today, and then the third one
by
is
the
that
way, why would that be? Would it be to help account for some of the differences that exist today?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we're going to go through that, and because Yasser Qadhi pokes holes in these as well, and we'll see that. So yeah, and then like you said, that's one reason to explain further differences. And the third one is that all of the ahruf exist today. So we're gonna break these 3 views down, and then we're gonna ask some questions, poke some more holes in the standard narrative. So under this view, that 6 of the 7 ahruf were destroyed by Uthman, and this is a view, actually, believe it or not, it was held by someone like Al-Tabari, for example, so kind of a big scholar, he held to this view. So he's under the position that only one of the, so Uthman burnt 6 of the 7 ahruf. And so only one of them exists today. So Yasser Qadi asked the question, so where the differences in the qira'at come from? If you're saying that one of the ahruf accounts for all the different Qurans that we have today, well, how can that be? How can one version or one mode account for all the differences that we have today? So that's big question, and I think that's probably why most Muslims don't hold to that view, because they can see the problems with it.
But this
and
is
then you have another,
but by the way, that's a pretty stupid response, right?
Yeah.
No, I think that's dumb. I think so. He's saying, oh, but if you only had one Quran and it's the same, where would all the differences come from? I don't know, copyist mistakes, not knowing where the dots go, all these kinds of things that came up later. Yeah. So in other words, there are all kinds of places differences in the manuscripts have come from. And you even pointed out that you could have one guy and then two of his students, and his students won't even agree. So you can get difference. You could basically get differences every time one person is passing on the Quran to another person. You can get differences. And so it's no great mystery. So anyway, my only point is I don't take this as a tremendously great response from Yasser Qadi here.
Yeah.
But remember, he's a Muslim, so he has to believe that Allah preserved it.
Right.
So he can't say, well, the scribe made a mistake. So he has to come from that premise. So they must all be qira'at.
That's true. So so to clarify that, in other words, when I was saying, wait a minute, we know exactly how these differences could arise, I'm speaking as a non-Muslim, whereas Yasser Qadi is speaking to Muslims, and it can't be part of the solution that scribes just keep messing up the Quran that Allah is preserving. So yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So exactly. And so here's the hadith that we were reading earlier. And remember that I said we're going to come back to this. Muhammad is, Muhammad said, recite whichever is easy for you. So if Uthman burnt 6 of the 7, why is he burning like this mercy from Allah? That this is like an easement from Allah that, hey, you guys have these different, 7 ahruf. These are supposed to be easy for you. Like there's another hadith where Muhammad said, we have like the child and the old, we have the learned and the unlearned, and these are the reasons why we have the different ahruf. And so he's saying like basically, therefore recite whatever is easier for you. So who is Uthman to come along and to burn this, these easements or these like this mercy? Yeah, how can he do that? How can Uthman do that? So that's just another problem for that view, where only one harf exists within.
It also makes him like sinful, and he also makes him delete that he's deleted 6 of the 7 ahruf that Allah revealed. So that means that it's not completely preserved.
Yes.
6.
And I think Muhammad Hijab is starting to lean towards this position, because when he had his debate with Chris from Speaker's Corner on this topic, he seemed to be alluding to this position where he said, like, Al-Tabari, for example, takes this view as well, and he basically argued that in order for the Quran to be preserved, you only need one of the ahruf to be preserved for that to be the case. And he gives some sort of example, like the Quran, like when it comes to like breaking an oath, there's like 3 different options for how you can free a slave, give charity, or feed, whatever it is. You got like 3 different options. And so he's saying like, as long as you do one of those things, it fulfills the condition. So you don't need to have all of these things. Like, it's not a perfect analogy, but that's kind of that's how he was arguing. And he was saying like, that's the people who take, the position that only one harf exists today. They take that view. They say, look, you only need one for the Quran to be preserved. Okay. So that's what they say. And there's, problems that we said already, but then more problems. But let's go to the next view here. So then the other view, that all of the ahruf exist. This is another view. So one view, 6 of the 7 were burnt, only one exists today. And then here's one that says all of the ahruf exist. And so they argue that throughout the canonical qira'at, the 10 canonical qira'at, that the 7 ahruf are kind of scattered and preserved throughout the 10. somehow, like you have like some of the, like let's say you have harf number 1, it's a little bit in this one, a little bit in this one, a little bit in this one, a little bit in that one, a little bit in that one, and it's kind of mixed and matched throughout, because they argue that there's no way that the companions would disregard or destroy any of the ahruf taught by Muhammad. That's what their argument is. Like, yeah, so and so Yasser Qadi asked the question. He's like, okay, so how is it that we have documented readings of the companions which differ from the 10 qira'at that we have today? So that means that they can't be from the ahruf according to this view. So this view is saying that all of the ahruf exist today, and they exist in the 10 different readings that we have. And so Yasser Qadi is asking the question, like, wait a minute, the companions recited in ways that we don't have today. And so are you saying that they recited something other than the 7 ahruf? How can that be? So he's kind of working on the assumption here that if the companions are going to be reciting anything, they're going to be reciting something from the 7 ahruf. But this view says that all the 7 ahruf still exist today. But he's like, well, wait a minute. We have companion codices, or we, like, you know, in the literature where we know that they recited things differently than we have today. So it can't be the case that all of the ahruf are preserved in the qira'at. And we're going to give you some examples of that. So here's chapter 24, verse 33. And do not compel your slave girls to prostitution if they desire chastity. So if they desire chastity, don't compel them to prostitution. To seek the temporary interest of worldly life, and if someone should compel them, then indeed Allah is after their compulsion forgiving and merciful. Now Ibn Mas'ud's Quran differs than the 10 that we have today, and he had an extra word added in there. And it says, Allah is to the females after their compulsion forgiving and merciful. So if you just take the Quran how it is today, like in the 10, like you can come to the conclusion that the human traffickers or
the traffickers are okay.
Allah they're okay. They can be forgiven.
Allah will forgive the Andrew Tates.
Yeah. Forgive the Andrew Tates, exactly. But Ibn Mas'ud is specifying, because he uses like the pronoun in Arabic specific to females, and he's specifying that it's only the females who are going to receive the forgiveness. And this is noted by Ibn Kathir in his commentary on chapter 24, verse 33.
So one is saying, hey, Muslims, you've got some slave girls. Don't compel them to be prostitutes if they prefer chastity. So it's not clear on what happens if the girls are fine with being prostitutes, or if you've conditioned them into thinking that's okay. But on the standard reading that we would read today in the Quran, it sounds like, but if you do compel your slave girls into prostitution, don't worry. After that, Allah is forgiving. He's merciful. Whereas the Ibn Mas'ud version, he's going to be merciful to the females because it's their master who's making them be prostitutes.
Exactly. And so here's another example here. In chapter 48, verse 9, it says that you may believe in Allah and his messenger, support him, honor him, and glorify him morning and evening. Now you have Qatada and other companions, their Qurans, they read that you may believe in Allah and his messenger, support him and honor him, and they glorify Allah morning and evening. So they add in that extra part, they glorify Allah, because if you just take the Quran how it's read today, it's not clear who you're supposed to glorify. Are you supposed to glorify Allah or glorify Muhammad? Because it seems like it's saying support him,
So that's Muhammad.
that's Muhammad, honor him, that's Muhammad, and then it says glorify him. You'd expect that to be Muhammad, but Muslims say no, that goes back to Allah. But you only really know that for definite if you take these other companion Qurans that actually specify Allah in their versions. So yeah.
So wait, so just to recap, these are examples. These are the kinds of examples Yasser Qadi is thinking of when he objects to the idea that all the ahruf are preserved, and he's saying, what about other readings that we don't have anymore and that the other companions had them?
Exactly. So he's saying, like, how could you guys be saying that, like, Ibn Mas'ud here or Qatada and other companions here, how can you guys say that what they were reciting wasn't one of the ahruf? Like, how can you say that? So basically he's saying like it's clear that at least some of the ahruf aren't preserved today because some of the companions recited differently than what we have today, right?
So just to be clear, he would be interpreting on this interpretation. He would be thinking that the reason Muhammad's own companions were quoting the Quran differently is because they were quoting different ahruf, and we don't have those today. We have quotations from their versions of the Quran. So he was thinking that these are actually the different ahruf.
Yeah, exactly. He was thinking that they must derive from some of the ahruf, and like you said, these exist in like certain literatures that we have, like Ibn Abi Dawood's book on the different codices of the Quran, for example, or like different commentaries as well. Like this comes from Al-Tabri's commentary in chapter 48, verse 9. He knows, like, so a lot of the commentaries and a lot of the literatures will note this stuff. But in terms of like what are the canonical readings, which means what's acceptable to read in prayer, like in worship and liturgy, you can't read these like companion Qurans. You can only read the 7, the 10 canonical ones in prayer for it to be valid and stuff. So Yasser Qali is arguing, like, if you guys say all of the ahruf exist in the 10 readings that we have today, well, then how do you explain the companions having different readings than what we have today? So that's kind of his argument there. So I just kind of summarized it here. So yeah.
By the way, there are Muslims in the chat saying actually glorifying is only to Allah because of other verses that say to glorify Allah.
Yeah, but we're just talking about just the Arabic grammar strictly. So,
and actually, Muslims do glorify Muhammad morning and evening.
You're darn right.
If you do the supplications, if you do 10 of the Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam morning and evening, there are Sahih hadiths that say you ought to do that to send him prayers and blessings morning and evening.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, like the reason there's a reason why the companions. I mean, this is what I think. I think that the companions, like, I don't think they were getting this from like different ahruf or whatever. Obviously, I'm not a Muslim, but so I think that they were just like trying to make sense of this verse, because, like, if you go to the commentaries, they do say support him. That goes back to his messenger, which means Muhammad. Honor him. That goes back to his messenger, Muhammad. And then it says glorify him. Oh, that goes back to Allah. Well, why? If you just go strictly based off of the grammar in Arabic, going back to the nearest antecedent, that goes back to his messenger. So you need to actually add in they glorify Allah. Like, you need to actually add Allah in there to make it clear that you're glorifying Allah morning and evening, not Muhammad. Otherwise, you have a huge problem.
And by the way, this is a principle of textual criticism. In other words, if a textual critic, a person who examines different versions of books and tries to figure out what goes back to the original, if they were looking at these two versions here, they would say that the glorify him is the authentic one, because the rule is people generally don't go from clear to ambiguous. It's when there's an ambiguous reading that they say, oh, I need to clarify this. I need to go ahead and clarify this. So in other words, if you've had a passage saying they glorify Allah, you wouldn't change that to glorify him, and then it becomes ambiguous as to who you're talking about. But if you had a verse that's ambiguous, or it even sounds like you're talking about glorifying Muhammad, then you'd want to do like a later person, or a person just eventually who sees the problem might want to clarify that and say, oh, okay, we're talking about Allah here, so let me just change it to glorify Allah. But yeah, seriously confusing if these are different ahruf, or if these all go back to Allah somehow.
Yeah.
I've got the reference for the glorifying of Muhammad 10 times in morning and 10 times in the evening. While you were talking, David, Hisn al-Muslim number 98, it's on sunnah.com. The Prophet said, who recites blessings upon me 10 times in the morning and 10 times in the evening will obtain intercession on the day of resurrection.
There you go.
There you go.
So morning and evening.
So you can't argue that it's not Muhammad, because your traditions say otherwise.
Yeah. We've even had like Arabic speaking Muslims who just go through this text, and they'll even admit that, yeah, that's like linguistically it's saying that goes back to Muhammad, but theologically we just can't accept that. So it's like,
but for a religion that prides itself on Tawheed so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Only Allah, no partners with him. To be so ambiguous in a verse is not acceptable.
Yes.
Yeah, so you've got Allah and his perfectly clear speech, and Muslims have to say, okay, grammatically, this perfectly clear speech sounds like we're glorifying Muhammad morning and evening, but theologically, we can correct Allah's grammar here.
Basically, yeah.
And so they give him so Qatada and other companions, they give him a little help. Here, let us show you how you should have said it in your perfect eternal word, Allah.
That's true. They improved on the Quran.
They did. They improved on it. So they did produce something better than it.
But
wasn't the first or the last time.
Yeah.
But the improvement didn't make it to the 20th century.
That's right. That's right.
Oopsie.
Yeah.
We fixed it. You ruined it again.
Allah was like, no, I want my word. I don't want you to improve it. I want my word.
I want it confusing. Dang it.
Yeah. Yeah, there are verses like chapter 3, verse 7 that says, some verses only Allah knows the meaning of. So maybe he wants that to be one of the verses that only he knows the meaning of. I don't know. So Yasir Qadhi, again, like he's arguing that if you take the position that all 7 ahruf are preserved in the canonical modern qira'at that we have, he's asking, well, how do you explain the fact that the companions read differently compared to what we have today in today's Quran? So so he's arguing that the companions, they must have been reading, not from a Muslim perspective, obviously, that they must have been reading from some ahruf which are not preserved today. So that leads us to...
Oh, yeah. I just want to say, this is hilarious because, so Yasir Qadhi is saying, in a nutshell, for those of you who believe that the way Allah revealed the Quran was preserved, and therefore if he revealed it in 7 different ways, then we must have those 7 different ways today, and we need that to explain how we have all these different qira'at. You can't do that because then we have no resources to explain all these other differences that we read about. You've just used up all our explanation. In other words, you've pulled the ahruf trump card for why we have all the differences in the Qurans that we still have today, but we know about other versions of the Quran that we don't have today that were held by Muhammad's own companions. How are we going to explain those? Guys, we need the ahruf trump card for that stuff. So you can't use it all. You can't use it all up for stuff today because then we won't have the explanatory resources to explain the problem back then. You can't use it all. And so this is just, oh gosh, this is dumb.
Yeah, exactly. So that leads us to the view that only some. This is the majority view. So Makki al-Qaisi, Ibn al-Jazari, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, as-Sayuti, etc. This is the majority view. Most Muslims hold to this view. So they argue, and they don't have a specific number, but they just argue that the 10 canonical readings that we have, the 10 qira'ats, they contain some of the 7 ahruf, but not all of them. Only insofar as the Uthmanic scripts, because they're different scripts and different readings, can accommodate them. So they say all the differences in the qira'at, they claim, are all traceable to the ahruf, but not every difference between the ahruf are preserved in the canonical readings that we have today. So that's kind of like the majority Muslim view on the topic. Okay. And so this is, so whatever view Muslims take, whether it's all of the ahruf are preserved, or one of the ahruf is preserved, or just some of them, some unspecified number, there's a problem, and we're going to get to that problem because we barely know anything about the ahruf tradition at all. But there's one thing that we do know from a successor of the companions that he tells us about them. And here's the hadith here. So the hadith is, in Al-Bukhari, in Muslim, and I have the reference there from Sunnah.com. And Ibn Abbas reported God's messenger saying, Gabriel taught me to recite in one harf, that's a singular harf, and when I replied to him and kept asking him to give me more, he did so till he reached 7 ahruf. Okay, now we have one of the companions here. Now, who's Ibn Shihab? Who's that?
Yeah, Ibn Shihab is one of the what they call the tabi'een, or the successors, the ones that came in a generation after Muhammad. And he had heard that those 7 ahruf are essentially one. So Ibn Shihab, he was around
Like Anas, right?
Muhammad's companions like Anas
Yeah.
ibn Malik and others that were very prominent, and he was taught, he was a scholar, he was taught knowledge from them.
Yeah, like he's not just making this up.
No.
He's getting it from the companions, and presumably the companions are getting it from Muhammad.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So his full name is Ibn Shihab al-Zahri.
Yeah, al-Zuhri.
And he and Ahmad ibn Hanbal said that his isnads are the strongest and the most authentic.
Yes.
That he has seen, actually. So he's the strongest narrator of hadith. He said that he heard,
I think over 2,000 hadith he narrated or something like that. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So yeah, this is what he says. You want to yeah.
He had heard that those 7 ahruf are essentially one, not differing about what is permitted and what is prohibited.
Okay, so this is really important now. So this is kind of like everything else was a lead up to this. This is the key part now of what I really want to get into. So here's what we have from one of the successors, from the companions, from Muhammad, this tradition here, that the ahruf, whatever they are, however many...
I see where you're going with this.
Yes.
Okay, good. Start that over.
You got it.
Yeah, you got it. So he said, so the ahruf do not differ in commandments. They don't differ in what's halal, nor do they differ in what's haram. And so David already knew where we're going. We have just 3 examples that we want to share. There's many more you can share. Like literally, there's like a PhD thesis, as a doctoral dissertation, literally just on this topic of the legal differences between the different readings of the Quran. And this is like published, and so there's many differences. But we're just gonna focus on 3. So if the qira'at are solely made up from at least some of the 7 ahruf, then they cannot differ in commandments. But
they do.
And so we just brought 3 examples. Like I said, we could have brought more. And we're going to go over...
One second, because again, there are people that this is new information for. So if anyone came in a little bit late, guys, there are I'll just kind of recap. So guys, there are supposedly, I mean, it's from the hadith and so on. So there is time to fabricate some of this stuff, but there are sayings attributed to Muhammad and his companions where Allah revealed the Quran in 7 different ahruf. So he revealed it in 7 different something, whatever that means. It's something that Allah revealed the Quran in 7 different modes, ways, whatever word you want to use, because no one knows what the ahruf are. So Allah reveals the Quran, 7 different, let's say, versions of at least some verses and so on. And then you have Ibn Abbas saying that he kept asking Gabriel to give him more until he had 7 different versions of a verse. And then one of the successors actually explained it and said, yes, but they're all one. All these different, whatever they are, all these different versions are all one. These things, so these ahruf, these 7 ahruf, whatever they are, we don't know. But the different ahruf, do not differ about what is permitted and what is prohibited. So there's no difference as far as Allah's commands about halal and haram. And so the question is, how do the ahruf relate to the different qira'at? So these are different versions of the Quran that we still have in the world today. How do the 7 ahruf, these different versions of the Quran in the time of Muhammad, how are these related to or distinct from differences that we still have in Qurans today? Are they the same thing? Are the differences in the ahruf the same thing as the differences in the qira'at? What's going on there? There's a bunch of different explanations, but Jai and DOC here are pointing out that whatever the ahruf are, they don't differ. There's no differences in what's halal and what's haram. And so if there are differences in the qira'at as to what's halal and haram, then the differences in the qira'at cannot possibly come from differences in the ahruf. The differences must have come from somewhere else. They can't come from the same differences that were in the ahruf.
Exactly. Yeah, great. Exactly. That perfect summary. And so yeah, we have just 3 examples. So we're going to just summarize them here, and then we're going to actually, we have slides for each one. So we'll get into them in greater detail. But in short, okay, so here's the 3. So chapter 5, verse 6, some Qur'ans command Muslims to wash their feet during wudu, which is their ritual washing purification. And this is actually a difference between Sunnis and Shia. Different Qur'ans command Muslims to wipe their feet during wudu. So one of them says to wash their feet. The other one says to wipe their feet. And I think, David, you have an example. You heard some Muslim speaker from, like, he went to Lebanon, and he you had an example of this last time we spoke about it. So, it was like some Muslim went to, like, Lebanon, and he heard Muslims, like, debating about this, like, because there's, like, Shia and Sunni that are living side by side, and some of them are, like, washing their feet during the purification, some of them are wiping their feet. And you said this was it was a huge thing. It was some Muslim speaker, I think, is a convert to Islam. I remember you mentioning it before.
I do not recall.
Okay, that's fine.
It's very important.
Yeah, it's very important.
Because if the wudu, which is the ablution, is obligatory,
yes,
you can't pray without it.
Yeah, you're not clean. It's like you're not purified, clean before Allah if
Yes,
you don't do this.
If you don't do it, your prayer is not accepted.
Mhm.
And prayers are obligatory. You can't go to paradise without prayer. And you can't do prayer without ablution.
Yes.
So, and the ablution, you have to wash the feet. It's one of the conditions.
Yeah. Wash or wipe, depending on the Quran.
So if you wash and it was actually Allah wanted you to wipe, or if you wipe and Allah wanted you to wash, none of your prayers are accepted.
Yes. So it's very important.
And you can't go to paradise without prayer.
Exactly.
So it's very important actually to get the wash or wipe correct.
Exactly. And so chapter 2, verse 184, second example, some Qur'ans command Muslims to feed a poor person to redeem their skipped fasting during Ramadan. And different Qur'ans command Muslims to feed multiple people. So some Qur'ans say you feed one person, other ones say you feed multiple people, depending on which Qur'an you're reading. They differ in the commandment here. And then chapter 2, verse 191, some Qur'ans command Muslims not to fight at Al-Masjid al-Haram. Different Qur'ans command Muslims not to kill at Al-Masjid al-Haram. So you have a difference. Is it haram to fight or is it haram to kill? What is it?
So on these differences, you're pointing out that the different ahruf, whatever they are, and no one knows except Allah, whatever the differences are, they have nothing to do, there are no differences that have anything to do with what's halal and haram. And yet we have different qira'at, so different readings of the Quran that we still have. And you go to one reading and it says you have to wash your feet before prayer. And then you have another version that says you have to wipe your feet before prayer. And so if you're reading the version that says wipe your feet and you wipe your feet, well, if the other version says you're not okay because you've been commanded to wash your feet. The other version of the Quran says that you're not good right now. Your prayer is not going to be accepted because you wiped and you didn't wash. And then in the second one, feed a poor person versus feeding multiple poor people if you have to skip fasting. So if you go to one version, okay, I'm missing my fasting, I will feed a poor person. Well, according to the other version, you're still not good. You're still in trouble. You're still in trouble with Allah for skipping your fasting. So one says you're fine, the other one says you're in trouble. And then, of course, you have the fighting versus killing. So if you're going with one version, you say, "Oh, I'm fighting. I'm just going to avoid killing." And then the other version says, "No, you can't fight either." And so you're in trouble. And so in these various versions, if you obey one of them, you're disobeying the other.
Exactly.
Sounds like a problem.
Yeah, and you can't do both at the same time.
Yeah, you can't do both at the same time.
It's either one or the other action.
Yeah, and so here is just 5 verse 6 again. Here's the 2 different versions, and it's really funny because the difference in Arabic is literally just a little vowel mark,
which is again like maybe a scribe did it wrong.
Yeah, it could just, like if you were just reading that, you would think, okay, one scribe just put like and then one with e, and it's like, okay, that's it. It's like, that's an easy mistake to make. But no, Muslims believe that they're both like, they both, well, Muslims today at least, they believe both of them are like, inspired and etc. So one of them is saying, yeah, like we said, wash your faces and your forearms to the elbows, wipe over your heads, and wash your feet to the ankles. The other one says, wipe your feet to the ankles. So you have two different rulings. You had a Muslim scholar, An-Nahas, said that these two readings were akin to two separate verses.
Lots of confusion here.
And this is like a Muslim scholar who's a grammarian.
And he's a classical one from about 300 after Muhammad, 300 Hijrah.
Yeah.
And he said they're like two different verses.
Two different verses. And so, okay, that's the first example. We have this one here, and poor person versus poor people.
Yeah, and the redemption here is the atonement for the sin of missing fasting.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. You can't meet Allah with unatoned for missed fasts.
Yes.
Because they don't have Jesus to atone. They have to atone themselves. So like you said, David, is it one poor person that I feed, or more than three or more?
Yeah, and so exactly. And so, and how Arabic works is you have like a singular form, a dual form, and then you have a plural for like 3 to 9. And so this is the plural. So it's not just saying like poor people like 2. It's saying 3 to 9. It's not even specific. It's just saying 3 to 9. So the singular is, okay, that's 1. But then the other one is like, okay, you got to feed at least 3 to possibly 9. And so that's a difference. That's a difference in rulings, difference in commands. Okay. And so, then we have this one here, chapter 2, verse, I put 190 just to give context. So 190 to 191. So it says, fight in the way of Allah those who fight against you, but do not transgress. Indeed, Allah does not like transgressors. And kill them wherever you overtake them, and expel them from wherever they have expelled you. And fitna is worse than killing. And do not fight them at al-Masjid al-Haram until they fight you there. But if they fight you, then kill them. Such is the recompense of the disbelievers. Now, the other Qur'ans command something different. And do not kill them at al-Masjid al-Haram until they kill you there. But if they kill you, then kill them. So is it fight or kill? Al-Jalalain comments on this, and he says, the verb there is different. It goes from slaying to fighting, like slaying as in killing, to fighting. So what do? Do you fight? Are you allowed to fight there? Are you allowed to fight at Masjid al-Haram? Or are you allowed to kill? Like what depends which Quran you're reading.
And it's very important because up to that point, it was not lawful for the Arabs to spill blood at the sacred mosque. So now this comes against what they say. Now they're saying you can spill blood in one reading, not the other.
Yeah, exactly.
So the context and the historical context doesn't help either.
Right. Okay, so those are just 3 examples. There's many examples. Like I said, people have literally doctoral dissertations on this, like literally on this topic of like the fiqh differences, the legal differences between the different readings of the Quran. And so there's just 3 examples. But I have, this is what I kind of laid out here, and David can kind of give in the syllogism form, kind of make it just really clear what the argument here is. But here's how I put it. If the ahruf cannot differ in commandments, and 2, the qira'at do differ in commandments, then we have to conclude then the qira'at, at least in these instances, cannot be derived from the ahruf. And so this is kind of the major argument from this whole presentation, that to any Muslim, you talk about preservation of the Quran. So this is like kind of like, now take this to just your anyone who can take away who's going to talk to Muslims about this topic. When they bring up preservation of the Quran and they bring up the hadith about the 7 ahruf, well, you point them to that explanation from the successor that says that they cannot differ in commandments. They can't differ in what's halal. They can't differ in what's haram. But we just showed 3 examples where they do differ in commandments.
So the ahruf are still missing. We don't know what they
so
are.
so yeah. So what's the origin of these qira'at? If they can't be the ahruf, what do they come from?
Yeah. And that's why the scholars say we don't know.
Yeah.
And by the way, so Yasser Qadi, I mean, remember what he was saying. You can't say that we have the all the ahruf preserved in the different qira'at, because then how would we explain differences with the companions and so on? So he understands that you have to explain differences in terms of ahruf, because other than that, if they're not coming from those ahruf, then where do they come from? Where do they come from? It's either humans deliberately changing things or humans messing up and making mistakes with the Quran. As a Muslim who's trying to convince people that the Quran's been miraculously preserved by Allah, you don't want either one of those. You don't want either one of those options. So you have to explain all the differences in Quran, in the different qira'at. You have to explain those in terms of ahruf, and you need the ahruf to explain the differences from the companions. And so the ahruf have to do a lot of work here. And so Jai and DOC are pointing out the ahruf cannot do the work of explaining all the differences in the qira'at, because the ahruf don't differ in commandments. The qira'at do differ in commandments, and therefore, same problem, where do the differences come from? You've got scribal errors, or you have Muslims deliberately making changes because they think they can improve on the Quran. Either way, your miraculous preservation argument has to be seriously modified or abandoned. If you wanted to put this in the form of a syllogism, you could do it in a couple different ways. Probably modus tollens would work. If the differences in the qira'at come from differences in the ahruf, then there won't be any differences in the commandments. Premise 2, there are differences in the commandments. And then the conclusion would be, therefore, the differences in the qira'at do not come from the differences in the ahruf. And then the follow-up issue would be, where do they come from then? What else do you have from Allah that can be used to explain these different versions of the Quran? Muslims who are watching, I just have to point out again, there's a principle of reasoning, inference to the best explanation. If you have multiple explanations, every once in a while, you'll have a situation where I kind of can't tell. This explanation works and that explanation works. Sometimes you have a best explanation, the one that fits the evidence best. And as Jai and DOC were pointing out, I mean, it's some of these differences in the meaning of the Quran. It's very easy to understand how some scribe just put a little dot in a different place, because he started off with a Quran that didn't have dots, and he gets to insert the dots, and if I put the dot here, the verse makes sense. But guess what? You could put the dot in a different place and it still makes sense, but it has a different meaning. And so what's the best explanation for why you have these differences? Scribes making mistakes or putting their own thoughts into this or something? Or Allah making things hopelessly confusing for the entire ummah? And Allah revealing contradictory verses in different ways. So in other words, what do you think is the best explanation? It's just amazing that you're so glued to thinking that your text is somehow miraculously preserved that you'll throw Allah under the bus and just, Allah's an idiot who just have to reveal in all these different ways and come up with all these different, and then I'm revealing it in all these different ahruf. Only Muhammad's companions didn't know about it until they had all the differences. And then somehow, later Muslims come up with a bunch more differences, but it all comes from Allah. We just don't know how. Why are you so glued to a scribe never making an error that you make Allah sound like an idiot? Like, why? You're trying to make it sound like Allah is super powerful and he's preserving your book, but you're making him sound like an incompetent moron, a bumbling idiot who keeps revealing the Quran in all these different ways during the time of Muhammad, and then somehow miraculously inserts all these differences into later versions of the Quran. He's just constantly changing the text over and over again, but it's all miraculously from Allah and it's perfect and never change. This is insane, guys. This is insane. What do you do here?
Yeah. I mean, major problems, right? It's just, and oh, by the way, I have a clip here just to kind of summarize everything from the interview right here. About a minute or so, under a minute, actually, I think. Check it out. Let's go.
This is now a well-known open secret amongst many Muslim graduate students and academics around the world. And this is well-known. Traditional understandings of ahruf and qira'at cannot answer some of these pressing questions that are now being poked by our people outside of, by our academics, not our, by their academics outside of the faith tradition. You see, in a Muslim environment, there's always some respect that we have for the Quran. We should. In a Muslim environment, we'll press a little bit and we'll say, okay, khalas, sami'na wa ata'na. And that's great, alhamdulillah. When you go to academia, they don't have that red line.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to just, you know, the famous story of the emperor with no clothes. They're going to just point out, no, that doesn't make any sense. Well, that's not true, and this and that. And they'll bring issues, which I'm not going to mention explicitly, that you know are true because they're in your own books. They're not inventing anything new.
So
they'll
you
bring
know
you
they're right.
And then you add to that very well-known issues of, I don't even want to be explicit. Then you bring on top of that makhtutat, and then. And it's very clear to you and to every single very advanced student and specialist that the standard narrative has holes in it. That's what I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
The standard narrative does not answer some very pressing questions. Okay? This is what I'm going to say.
All right.
Yeah. So, and again, guys, the standard narrative that he's talking about there is not the standard narrative that your average Muslim has been given. The standard narrative that your average Muslim was given was perfect preservation, dot for dot, from the time of Muhammad down to the present. There's never been one letter of difference between any two Qurans, not a single dot of difference between any two Qurans. That's a lie that they told to people who are completely ignorant. That's the lie that Dawa guys told. That's the lie that the scholars told, because they knew that if you knew the actual history of the Quran and all the problems that they have no way of figuring out. They can't figure them out. You have the greatest scholars of all time trying to make sense of these issues, and they just can't. They knew that if average Muslims knew about that this is going to rock their faith. And therefore, they preferred lying to you. Perfect preservation right down to the letter. But that's not the part. That's not the holes in the narrative. That's just a flat out lie. The narrative is the narrative that Muslim scholars have been agreeing upon and pretending that these things make sense, that their explanation of, we'll explain these differences in the Qira'at in terms of differences in the Ahruf, and we'll just explain these things. Yeah, we've got this figured out. And the Western academics saying, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Here's why. Oh, you're saying that these differences, as Jai is pointing out, you're saying that these differences in the Qira'at go back to differences in the Ahruf, but wait a minute, I thought the differences in Ahruf have no contradictions in terms of what's halal and what's haram, but the Qira'at do. And so they're pointing these things out, and Yasser Qadhi saying, we know they're right. We know these guys are 100% correct. We know our explanations don't actually work. We know that the narrative that the scholars are telling among ourselves, we know that it doesn't work. We know it. And so, one, the narrative that they gave to regular Muslims, that was just a complete lie. But then even the scholars, Yasser Qadhi admits, we've been pretending that we've got this figured out, that we can make sense of this. And we can't. We know it. We know we can't. The narrative has holes in it. And so it's just, Muslims, what does it take? What does it take for you to realize that your book is a giant mess? It was a mess all along. It was a mess during the time of Muhammad. He had to lie and blame Allah for his own lapse in memory. Muhammad, why are you reciting the Quran differently to the different people over time? Because Allah? Yeah, Allah made me do it. Allah revealed it in all these different ways. So you blame Allah for that stuff, and then you get down to today, and what are the scholars doing? They're lying about their explanations, just like Muhammad did. He's their pattern of conduct, after all. And what do they say? Oh, yes, we've got this. Well, first of all, no, they don't even say that. They pretend there are no differences. And then if you expose them for lying about the differences, they say, okay, there's these differences, but we've got it all figured out. It's all, it's Qira'at and Ahruf and so on. And if you actually pin them up against the wall and you're putting them in the face of actual scholars who can expose them, then suddenly, okay, we have no idea what's going on. It's just a big, huge, confusing mess. Our best scholars can't figure any of this stuff out. Just please give us time. Maybe eventually we'll figure it out. This is ridiculous, guys. Like, what does it take? How much clearer does it need to be? One, that your book isn't anything like what has been told to you by your scholars. It's a big mess. And two, what does it take for you to realize that your entire religion that's been taught to you is taught to you by liars and manipulators who are telling you not the truth. They're telling you whatever they think is most likely to keep you confident of your religion. And they will tell you absolutely anything. And it's the same as the Dawah guys who will lie in a heartbeat. They'll lie in a heartbeat if they think it will get you to convert to Islam. How do you not realize this? It is the most obvious thing ever. And if you don't get, I don't even know what to do. If you just don't care about truth and you don't care when people are lying to you, I don't know what I could possibly tell you.
Amen. I mean, it's about time they stop beating those little kids in madrasas, you know, the ones that they send to Quran school. If they get one syllable wrong, the Hafs Quran, if they get one verse wrong, because different verses, different surahs, different commands, different halal, different haram, different rulings, different diacritical marks. I mean, they treat the Hafs with such a reverence, like it's holy, and you can't get one vowel sound wrong. And yet, if you look, you'll see all kinds of things added and taken away. Whole surahs that are different lengths,
and
Muhammad,
Muhammad himself would make mistakes in the recitation of the Quran. Hey, maybe we need to make a skit one day where Muhammad goes to a Quran class and he's reciting, and he recites the wrong version and stuff like this, and someone beats him with a stick.
Yeah, be good. Yeah. Boom boom room. You can use all these examples.
Yeah, like one of the examples we showed, like it's literally just a difference between like literally just a vowel, like a vowel, o vowel, e vowel. It's like literally just one difference, but it changes the grammar and the understanding of the verse completely. So that's why they have to be so strict about it, because if you just mess up once, it can change the whole meaning or the whole understanding of the verse. It changes the commands.
But they don't realize that the mistakes were already made.
Exactly. They don't realize that.
During history.
Yeah.
The Muslim history.
And so, yeah, so I already, oh, wait, are we?
Yeah, we're still on.
Okay. Yeah. So, sorry, I had my my thing up, the other window up. But yeah, so basically, yeah, the Muslims, who I see some Muslim comments. One guy said that Fareed is going to respond to this. Yeah, that's not. I don't know.
Fareed's going to get you.
Yeah, last time he did a response to us, he did like a 5-hour response, and then he ended up deleting it because everyone was commenting like, "Dude, really 5 hours?" And then he did like a shortened version, like two hours or so. And
didn't Fareed mix up the qira'at and the ahruf? He did that once.
He makes all these different mistakes. He has like a playlist on his channel about like 100 mistakes that Christian Prince made or something like that. And I mean, I could do the same thing for him and actually show examples where he makes mistakes. He just makes mistakes all the time. So the Muslim who was saying that Fareed's going to respond, yeah, we welcome it, but don't get your hopes up because he usually doesn't actually respond. Fareed fails to respond time and time again.
Yeah, we have different ideas of what it means to respond to something, right?
Yeah.
Those mean completely different things in the Muslim community and in the non-Muslim community. And what I mean here, and by the way, notice the parallel between like Fareed responds or Hijab responds or Ali Dawah responds or something. Notice the similarity to Muhammad's response, right? Like one of his companions starts seeing the problem. Wait a minute. You're reciting the Quran in different ways and we've never heard about it. And all of a sudden you say that Allah revealed it in all these different ways. And no one ever bothered to tell me, the greatest of the reciters of the Quran. No one bothered to tell me about this at all, at any point. And so he notices the problem. What's Muhammad's response? Hits him in the chest. Boom! Shut up. Quit your whining. And, oh, okay, now I feel better. But I mean, think about this. It's just, hey, you're sitting there thinking about this and stuff. Shut up! Bang! That's it. But that's what the Dawah guys are. That's what Fareed is going to do. What is Fareed going to do in a response by Fareed? He's going to speak in an incredibly confident and condescending tone, and that's it. That's enough for the followers, just like it was enough for Ubay ibn Ka'b. Just it's a verbal hit in the chest. And so it's going to be, oh, well, they say this, but, oh, look, let me find this guy who says this. You see, you've been refuted. And all the fans, oh, wow, powerful, powerful. He said words in response to them. Therefore, he has responded to them. That's not what we mean by response. That's not what we mean by response. If you want to respond to what Jai is saying about Muslims not knowing what the Ahruf are and having 40 different explanations, then explain, no, we do know what the Ahruf are. And here's what they are, and here's the proof. So, Jai, you're wrong. And oh, Jai, you say that there are differences in the commands in the different Qira'at? No, I will show you. These all have the exact same commands. I will refute you. Or notice, those are the kinds of things that you would actually have to do. Those are not the sort of things that Fareed is going to do. He's going to give some response and say, oh, but there was a scholar, or what he'll do is, this is such a dumb argument that it's not even worth responding to. And then he'll wave it off, and the fans will go, yeah, great, what a great response, Fareed. You showed them that their responses are so dumb, you're not even going to respond to them on a show called Fareed Responds. But that's what you get. And so, guys, I mean, think, if anything, Jai and DOC just pointed out, if there's a flaw in the reasoning somewhere, you'd be able to show, here's why this is wrong. We do know what the Ahruf are. We do know that these differences in the Qira'at all go back to these Ahruf. Here's how. You would explain that. That's what he's not going to explain at all. At best, best case scenario, he will pretend to respond to those things because he knows that 99% of you are going to fall for it, no matter what he says. And this is Islam. And you wonder why we think Dawah is a complete joke at this point.
Exactly.
Wild stuff.
Yeah, and they're like you said, we have way different ideas of what it means to respond. And plus, these guys have no problem with lying. Like, they're just so dishonest. Like, we were just reviewing a video today. We had a stream today where we were talking about why Sajid regrets promoting Daniel Hekikachu, and what he said was that he just lies too much. I don't know, from his perspective, he's lying about other things. Yeah, he does lie too much, but he thinks he's lying about other things than what we're thinking about when we're saying Daniel lies. But
he's only salty because the lie was about him.
Yeah, exactly.
If they lie about each other, they get mad.
So they have no problems. Like, even their top guys, like Fareed's not even close, but their top guys that are out there doing the debates and things like that, they actually just have no problems lying at all. Like it's so, yeah, we're hoping that this material gets out to them, to the Muslims, but for the Muslims listening, don't expect like your Dawah guys to actually give you responses to this stuff.
Yeah, and that is an important little difference there, that Sajid recognizing, hey, Daniel is a liar. And when I think of Sajid, I think, oh, this poor guy doesn't know what he's been so brainwashed and manipulated, he doesn't realize how stupid what he's saying sounds. But when I think of Sajid, I don't think here's a liar. When I think of Daniel, I think here's a liar. When I think of hijab, I think here's a liar. When I think of Ali Dawah, I think this guy, wow, what a liar. When I think of Sheikh Uthman, I think, what a liar. I mean, Sheikh Uthman, this is a guy who, like, covered himself in fake blood. Oh, the kuffar, they got me. They're trying to stop the Dawah. Now support my work. So you have the people that, I could think they're wrong, but I don't think they're, like, deliberately lying and so on. Isn't it weird that those are the guys who never become popular in Islam?
Yeah.
The guys who become, the bigger a liar you are, and the more confident you sound when you're giving those lies, that is the biggest factor in how popular you become as a Dawah guy. So, guys, and anyone out there who's deciding to go into Dawah, hey, I want to do Dawah. I want to give Dawah. I want to be a popular Dawah guy and rescue Islam. Just dial up your confidence level to 10, no matter how idiotic what you're saying is, and then dial up your lying to 10. Don't even worry about consequences. Don't even worry about people exposing your lies. The Dawah, the community of fans will love you no matter what you say. And they will shower you with praise and honor and money and everything else. And that's just how Dawah is. And what a massively dysfunctional community this is what they expect us to take as the truth. It's insane.
Exactly. Like they actually, one of their things that they value is this, like you're allowed to lie. You're allowed, they don't call it lying. They'll call it other names like, like Tawriya or whatever else, or Taqiyya. That's what they say. Oh,
Kitman.
no, that's only the Shia. That's only the Shia. Well, the Sunnis have it too. They just call it by different names. And it's like it's just when you go over like what is allowed in this religion, like they're allowed to give like, ambiguous meanings where they mean one thing, but they say something else to confuse people to thinking that they're telling, something else. It's like that's allowed in this religion. Like they allow that kind of stuff, like this double speak. And this is something that's like praised, and it's like you're this is an alternative to lying. Like notice in Islam, the alternative to lying is not telling the truth. It's, well, here's just an acceptable form of lying. Like anyone else would call it lying, but we don't call it lying. And this is just how you guys can do it. And you have like, you have a check mark. You go ahead. You can go do it. And it's just, it really like, you hope that you when you engage with Muslims, you really want to pray that God prepares their hearts, because they are in a system that doesn't value the truth. But so your hope is that the person you're talking to, like they actually do value the truth, and you can get somewhere with that.
And the other part there is if you're talking to a Muslim, keep in mind that even if he's just spouting complete nonsense, he's been conditioned like this. I mean, he's just heard this all his life, and he's been conditioned all his life to just mindlessly accept what Dawah guys and Muslim scholars say, even if it makes no sense, even if it contradicts his own sources, even if you find out that you've been lied to, even if they told you all your life perfect preservation and they know it's complete nonsense, still, where else are you going to go as a Muslim? You have to go to these same exact scholars, these same exact Dawah guys who've been lying to you your entire life. Where else are you going to go? They're all lying to you. Where else are you going to go? So as a Muslim, you still have to keep going back to the same guys. So, just think about, how rough a position that they're in, and then realize that if they're not going to hear the truth from you, where are they going to hear it? Yeah. They're not getting it from their Dawah guys at all, ever. All they're going to get is lies. They're not going to get it from their scholars. So they're the only place they're going to hear the truth about their book and about their fake prophet is from us. So better be ready to share that. We do rescue missions, ladies and gentlemen. There are people who've been kidnapped by the system that was foisted upon the world by a caravan robber. And now we got to go on rescue missions. It's rescue missions to rescue all these people who've been kidnapped. All right, we got a few super chats. You guys have any final thoughts before I jump on a few super chats?
Yeah, one of the things that I really like doing when we're talking about holes in the narrative, I think I heard Hatun say this, just to give her credit, but I really like this. It's a easy way to kind of transition between that and the gospel. So the Muslims, they have these holes in the narrative, and Muslims are trusting their eternal salvation in these holes that cannot save. But we want to introduce to Muslims the holes that can save, and these are the holes that are in the hands and in the feet of the Lord Jesus Christ. And those holes, Muslims, do bring salvation, because those holes are, the holes that Jesus was nailed to the cross on. He died for your sins. He rose from the dead 3 days later. Those holes you can trust. The Islamic holes, Islamic narrative, you can't trust that. That's lies. That's distortion. That's trying to get you to believe something that is not true. But these holes in the Lord Jesus Christ, they bring salvation. The prophet Isaiah says that by his wounds we are healed. Those wounds, those holes, bring us healing and bring us salvation. So that's our kind of takeaway at the end of all this. We want to just present that to Muslims and urge them to repent and to believe in Jesus. Anything?
No, we won't believe that because our Dawah guys told us not to. And Muhammad told us not to. The guy who would lie about God to cover up his own failing memory, that's the guy that we have to trust no matter what. And all the Dawah guys who lied for 14 centuries to us, we have to believe them no matter what, instead of believing the Lord Jesus Christ.
Amen. Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, well, yeah, we'll head out. We'll let you answer the super chats. It's late here in the UK, but yeah, God bless you. Thanks for having us on, and take care.
All right, catch you next time, guys.
Okay.
Thank you. God bless you.
All right. Hope none of these super chats were for Giant DOC, but we'll see. It sounds like I might... I think this is about Pikachu. Is that me as Captain Kirk there? Hey! That should be Mike Winger. Well, no, he wouldn't be Captain Kirk. He'd be like some dork Spock or something. Anyway, it sounds like I might Pikachu. I say four-year-olds will do. My arguments have been refuted, but the same old lies I throw at you, and all my problems come from the Jews. Who am I? Well, that could be describing a bunch of different people, but we know you're talking about Mike Winger. No, just kidding. That's Daniel Hakikachu. And everyone knows it. Abu Ahruf says, Yasser should title his advanced topics in Quran Sciences book, Only Holes in the Narrative. He should title it something like that. Yeah, think about this. What would you even teach at this point in your amazing advanced topics in the Quran Sciences? It's all a disaster. Everything is massively confusing for anyone who remotely takes it seriously that all this goes back to Allah. And yet you kind of have to as a Muslim. I mean, you don't have to, but if you're going to be like an Orthodox Sunni Muslim, you have to take these explanations seriously, even though you know they don't work. It's just what happens when you build your beliefs upon centuries of lies. Let's see. The first generation Muslims wrote the word down wrong. Momo wasn't a prophet. He just loved prophet. Yes, he did. If you convince enough people to mindlessly follow you. And when I say mindlessly, guys, that's a command. It doesn't use the word mindlessly, but it says that you can have no resistance against anything Muhammad has decided. Surah 4, verse 65. You're not a real Muslim unless you have no resistance against anything Muhammad has decided. And you accept his commands with full submission. So Muslims tell us Islam is the religion of submission to Allah. What does 465 of the Quran say? You can only submit to Allah by completely, mindlessly, unquestioningly accepting everything Muhammad says. So what's this religion really about here? It's about Muhammad. Allah is his sock puppet, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see. $1,000 seeds. I say no. Me and my follow. Keep an eye on my cat. You could call me a ranger because I know the trek like the back of my hand. I refute lies while giving you my top answers. Who am I? Well, we know that's Mike Winger. No question. Heard. How can I make these bigger here? Oh, there we go. And aha! That's better. That's better. Heard one time Christianity could allow sex in heaven if angels or houris offered it and God would approve, because men judge over angels and marriage is no more. Odd reading of 1 Corinthians 6:3 and Matthew 22:3. Yeah, not the houris. I have seen Christian scholars who maintain that there will be sex in the afterlife. That what it's talking about, us being like angels, isn't referring to that. But I have not studied it, and therefore I will not comment. You can probably find people who do. The Uralic tribe says Hamza from Hamza's Den is doing a live stream now in his arena, asking people to challenge Islam or prove their own faith. Anyone interested, go check in. Yeah, and I recommend going there and asking some questions and presenting some challenges. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. Loaves of Bread says, we need a stream going over Dawah, I guess that's Ali Dawah, and Muhammad Hijab's Arabic, including David's free lesson about who Allah prays to. Oh, yeah, we'll be bringing it up in the near future. Points about Allah praying upon people or praying for people and so on. Just Allah praying. Mary Harp. Too many Marys. She believes she's figured out where Muhammad copied this from. And it does clearly refer to God praying. And she believes that Muhammad copied this idea from someone and that she can show that he copied it. And therefore, we know exactly what it means. I mean, it's clear. It's another... Earlier in this show, we were talking about Muslims having the text, and the text says one thing, but theologically, they think, oh, it can't mean that. It can't mean glorify Muhammad day and night. Therefore, even though that's what the text says, therefore, we'll clarify it and we'll say, because of theology, we'll conclude that it's talking about Allah. It's a similar situation where the text is saying that Allah and his angels pray upon the prophet or for the prophet. But theologically, you think, how is Allah praying? It doesn't make any sense. And so, it means sends blessings, or it means one of 10 different things. And it's the exact same situation. We can't go with what it actually says, so we have to just end up with confusion. We don't know what it means, and any person can basically say, here's what it means, and say whatever you want. But the Quran keeps putting Muslims in this really, really weird position of... The Quran says something that completely disagrees with their theology, and so they have to change the meaning of the Quran to line up with their theology. But yes, we will be revisiting the issue of Allah's prayers very soon. Abu Ahruf here says, if a particular Qiraat cannot be derived from Ahruf, it was not revealed, since only Ahruf were revealed. Check and mate. That's the issue we want to force them to address, and this is why Yasser Qadhi did not want to talk about this live. As soon as you start figuring this out, wait, these are the Ahruf, so there were differences back then, so we started off with differences, and then even today we have differences. And so are these differences the same as those differences? Oh, wait, we can't explain these differences because of these differences. Therefore, these differences have to come from somewhere else, and we don't know where, so we just have to make something up. That's the position we want them to answer. So we eventually, I don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't think it's ever going to happen, because Yasser Qadhi is not going to sit down with someone like us and have this discussion. Even if we're he would say, because because David Wood's a evil, vile jerk or something like that. That's why I'm not going to have the discussion with him. It could be anyone. It could be you get the nicest person in the world who at least knows about these issues. Yasser Qadhi's not going to sit down about this anymore. He's not. Because he knows. He's admitted that their explanations don't work. And so if it's a knowledgeable person, if it's a knowledgeable non-Muslim asking these questions, they're just going to wreak havoc on the standard narrative. They're going to show the explanations of Muslim scholars don't work at all. They don't work. And then Yasser Qadhi, he doesn't have any explanations. So there are all these problems, and we have no answers. And that would be the takeaway. You think that guy's going to sit down and let that happen? Of course not. Because this is the issue right here. Lots of problems. Endless problems. Wait. Where were we? Here we go. Compare Qurans to Masoretic texts preservation. We could actually, we could get someone who deals with issues of Bible textual preservation and kind of compare these difference, compare and contrast the differences and so on. The issue is Jews, we've never had a problem with the idea that a scribe can make a mistake. We've never had a problem with that idea. We would want to spot when a scribe makes a mistake. We'd want to be able to detect the mistake. That's what textual criticism is. You're sifting through manuscripts and saying, okay, that looks like a scribal error or something like that. We've never had a problem with it, which means we're totally free if we see a manuscript to go, oh, okay, a scribe messed up. And we know this scribe messed up because this manuscript is the first time this reading appears, and we've got all these manuscripts before it in all these different parts of the world, and they say something else. We can spot the difference. A Muslim isn't going to want to admit that a scribe made an error. So if all of a sudden in like the 15th century, you see a different reading the Quran, he'll want to say, no, that came from Allah. That came from Allah. It's so weird. It's weird stuff. And let's see. Where's AP? Don't know. Wait, where's AP? Missing your stream. CP is good. But no, as far as, again, I mentioned this earlier. Jai was just messaging me earlier today. He said, hey, I got a presentation. It was like early this morning. He said, hey, I got a presentation. I've been working on an argument dealing with the Ahruf and the Kirat that I can give sometime. And I said, hey, not doing anything tonight if you want to do it. And so, yeah, and we made it 6 o'clock so that Europeans could tune in. And so, yeah, that's why AP's not here. It was just me and Jai and DOC and, hey, you want to go live with this? And then we did. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So what do we think? Has the Quran been perfectly preserved? Has the Quran been perfectly preserved? What do we think? Any Muslims want to chime in here and tell us how the Quran has been perfectly preserved, which is exactly what you were saying to us 5 years ago? Perfect preservation, right down to the letter. I have Muslim apologetics books in here talking about the perfect, miraculous preservation, dot for dot, letter for letter. That worked fine until the dawn of the internet, where we can actually put different Qurans up on the screen and show you differences, where we can all see a video of someone showing up to Speaker's Corner with dozens of different Arabic Qurans and exposing the lies. So why did you tell us perfect dot for dot, letter for letter preservation? I'm asking you, Muslims who are watching, why did you tell us that? Keep in mind, I don't think that you were lying, like as in terms of deliberately deceiving people. I believe that you were deceived, you were lied to, and then you passed on those lies. So why did you tell us? Why did you tell us perfect letter for letter, dot for dot preservation? Why did you tell us that? You told us that. You told us to convert to Islam because of this amazing preservation. You told us that because you accepted the lies of liars. And then in other words, you are the megaphone for other people's lies. Your dawah guys are liars. They tell the lies to you, and then you shout their lies at us. That's what you are to them. Your deception megaphones. You spread the lies that they come up with. And then you get mad at us when we expose those lies. How massively dysfunctional is that? They lie to you. You love them for it, and you love their lies, and you pass on their lies. We come along and we expose the lies. We say, hey, what they just told you about Ahruf, that's false. Here's why. What they just told you about perfect preservation, that's false. We can prove it. Here's why. What did they tell you about the Kirat? That's false. We can prove it. And you get mad at us. You hate us for telling you the truth. So you love liars and you hate people who tell you the truth. And you're telling us you've got the true religion. If I didn't know anything else about your religion except that it causes you to love lies and liars and to hate anyone who dares tell you the truth and to hate any true claim that they tell you, that would be enough for me. I would say there's no way this is the true religion. I wouldn't even have to examine your prophet. I would say a religion that produces a love of lies and a hatred for the truth, that is not from God. It's not. So I'm interested in understanding how, in the name of common sense, you take your religion seriously after seeing the lies of your dawah guys exposed over and over and over again. I have to say, from a non-Muslim perspective, it is extremely disturbing to see what has happened to. It's along the same lines as someone who gets kidnapped, taken hostage, and gets Stockholm syndrome, and all of a sudden starts defending just complete nonsense. And they're like, how did this happen? How have you been brainwashed into defending this stuff? How is this even possible? It's like that. But that's Islam. That's what we're dealing with. All right, guys. I haven't talked to AP today, but I assume we're going live. I assume we're going live on his channel tomorrow. In other words, I assume we'll be back. I assume we'll be back to some of our regular live streams. So, yep. As far as I know, we'll be back on AP's. We've got a lot to discuss. I don't know. AP's probably going to want to talk a lot about some of the politics we've been seeing. And so be back for that probably on Saturday, unless he's got something else he wants to talk about. But I'm assuming there's so much political stuff going on. I'm assuming he's want to talk about that a bit. And then we'll be back on my channel for something awesome on Sunday. All right. Thanks for joining us. And guys, keep in mind, the point of having a discussion like this is for people to actually learn and use it. So again, the Dawah guys, they tell their fans things. They lie to their fans because they want their fans to go out and spread those lies. We actually share the responses and the refutations so that people will learn it and then learn to go around and expose the lies. Because at the end of the day, guess what? The incredibly overwhelming, vast majority of Muslims who absorb the lies of the Dawah guys are not listening to me, So but you might be interacting with some of them. You might know some of them. You might know some people who aren't watching me, who aren't watching Jai, who aren't watching DOC. They don't see the responses. So you have to give them the response. So learn about the ahruf, learn about the kirat, learn some of the examples that were given as far as exposing the Dawah lies, and go expose them to your Muslim friends, to your Muslim coworkers, fellow Muslim students, if you're at school or something like that, online, social media. Keep doing it. We have to be relentless. We have to be relentless here. The Dawah guys are in panic mode, so they're dialing up their lies. They're dialing it up. We're dealing with more Dawah than ever now because the community's in a panic mode and they're rallying around any Dawah guy who's going to come out and defend the religion. So we have more Dawah than ever. So we just have to be completely relentless. Look at how effective it's been over the past 2 decades as they're now dealing with the avalanche of apostasy. We want to keep that avalanche, want to keep it going, and we want to see it growing. All right, everyone. I'm assuming we'll see you tomorrow.